Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff this week, sort of a grab bag hangout episode.
Yeah, like lots of little stuff has happened in the past couple weeks.
Yep, I've played some movies, I've seen some movies, I've played some games. I'm adding one to the outline right now because I forgot to add it. But I'm going to talk about that, and Sean's played some stuff and seen some stuff, and then we got some news to talk about, and just crazy things going on. We were going to record last week. We had every intention of doing it, and then my dog got sick.
Yeah.
And I could have recorded, I just didn't want to leave the dog alone.
Yeah, and there wasn't anything super big to talk about, and now that we've delayed it another week, we have another 2 different video game betas to talk about, so we can pack it all together now.
Yep. And I have to say, so I have taken care of kids sometimes, like my niece when she was born.
Right,
I take care of her a little bit. And I've taken care of my dog, obviously. And my dog, I had her since she was a puppy, so she's about a year old now. I think between the two, it's easier to take care of a human baby.
Okay.
In some ways. Because here's the thing that's easier about a dog is you can leave a dog alone if you have to go run an errand.
Right.
Obviously, you should never do that with a baby.
No, yeah.
The dog, if you leave it in the house, unless it's like a really shitty dog, it'll be fine. It'll hang out, it'll sleep. It's not going to ruin anything unless you leave it for too long.
I mean, the dogs do survive on their own, unlike babies that don't.
So that's one thing that dogs have going for them in terms of making them easier. But when dogs get sick, it's scary, especially because you don't have easy access to dog medicine the way you do human medicine.
Right.
If a baby gets sick, like if a baby started throwing up, I'd be a little worried because I'm like, oh shit, I'm taking care of this baby. But I'd be like, there are so many people I could ask about this.
Yeah.
Right? And there's like doctors everywhere. With dogs, it's a little harder. You have to find a 24-hour vet, and they're not like emergency rooms. They're not close.
Yeah.
And then it's just, so it's funny. Like my dog, in no way like life-threatening. She was just sort of had a hacking cough and was throwing up. Also, dog vomit, way scarier than human vomit. Just say that.
Yeah.
Also, it's much harder to get a dog to take their medicine than it is a baby.
You can't level with the dog in any way. You can't communicate with the dog in any real way. And then taking care of a dog is like taking care of an alien, right? It has a completely different physiology. I mean, it's not completely different, but it has a different enough physiology that you always have to think where it's like, if this dog eats this, does the dog just die in like 5 seconds?
Right.
I don't know. Like, can the dog eat chocolate and cheese and shit like that? Where it's humans can just eat what humans can eat. I don't know what's a poison to a fucking dog.
When Phoebe, my dog, when she was much younger, like 4 or 5 months, I was taking care of her, and she wound up eating, it was some kind of ointment that she found in a bathroom, and and I was like, oh god, and then I have to call like the animal poison support hotline. And you have to pay $50 just for a consultation.
Okay.
So you do that. The dogs are expensive too. And then, with a human baby, I feel like I could look up if for some reason I didn't know.
Yeah, you have 2 options. You either look it up or you just eat some of the ointment yourself. And if it starts making you sick, it makes humans sick because you're both humans.
Exactly.
So that one's a big gamble, but sometimes it might pay off.
Phoebe is fine now. I finally got her to take her medicine by taking pieces of bread, spreading peanut butter all over it, putting the pills in the peanut butter, and then wrapping it up. And that way she couldn't find the pill and spit it out because it's stuck in with the peanut butter.
Okay, that makes sense.
But now she really loves peanut butter.
That's the other risk is you don't know what weird substances dogs have like chemical addictions to. Like humans don't. So now your dog is just a peanut butter addict, and you're going to find your dog just like in a back alley somewhere, like with the other weird dog wearing a trench coat.
Do you want crunchy or creamy?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
You don't want to get that crunchy stuff. That fucking, you get that in your veins. Like, it's not coming out.
No.
Yeah, you're not coming back from that one. I knew a guy who did crunchy once, and fucking, I don't know him anymore.
Yeah, no. So it's all good. My dog's fine. You don't have a dog.
No.
Or a child to take care of that I know of.
I mean, not that I know of either. But, there's always a possibility.
All right, so we'll update you on that if that ever comes to fruition.
Yeah, this podcast would change a lot if, the illegitimate child suddenly rears its head.
All right. So this is great. We're 4 minutes in and already making some really dark jokes.
Yeah.
It's going to be that kind of episode.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and we're actually going to shift gears for a second. Let's talk about something pretty sad. Get this out of the way now so it doesn't maybe hang a cloud over the whole thing for us, which is the death of Gene Wilder, famous actor, passed away at the age of 83. So ripe old age, which is nice. Didn't die young or anything. And of course, he'd been retired for a while, so it's not like he was out there acting. But I was thinking about this. If I think of actors who have had like an impact on my like just life and like pop culture sensibilities, there's not many I could rank above, if at all, Gene Wilder. Because he's someone, obviously, I knew from a super young age with Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And then with, when I got a little older, I could watch things like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein and all of his classics. And so it's just, he's one of the few actors I can say I have known about and watched for my whole life. And, we can talk about why he was such a great actor and all these things. But that alone is just, it's surreal when you're watching a Gene Wilder movie and it's like, okay, he's not acting at the moment, but he's still out there and that's awesome. And then he passes away and it's sad.
Yeah, no, I basically feel the same way where, I think people obviously like our age and younger, like grow up watching like Willy Wonka on like VHS and stuff. Like I was actually looking at my VHS copy of Willy Wonka a couple of days before he passed away because I was organizing a bunch of stuff. And so that was like a weird thing where I was thinking about that movie and him a little bit before he died. But yeah, so it's like that was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. And then, like you say, as you grow up and get older, you grow up with that movie and then you discover like all of his like other stuff with Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles in particular, I think being like most people's big favorites. But like it's he was just such a remarkable actor in so many ways with like so many incredible roles and such a unique quality to him as a person. It felt like on screen that's like so few actors could do what he could do, and you could see that in all of his roles. And it was just like a weird. It was almost kind of like when David Bowie passed away, where it's like that he seemed like an immortal person. Like there's something about that quality of him on screen that was like, this guy doesn't exist in the way that we exist. Like he's on a completely different level.
Absolutely, and Gene Wilder was not hugely prolific as an actor. I think he only made 25 films in his career, and then did some TV stuff as well. But 25, not a lot for a guy who worked as long as he did. But those 25, and especially the ones that he is most famous for, those are such dense performances. They have so much to them, so much color and shading. And, literally, you can go back to any of those famous movies of his as many times as you want to, and I really do think you discover new things in his performances every time.
Like, and for me, like by far the biggest one for me, and I think for a lot of people, is Willy Wonka. That's the one I've just gone back to so many times over my life, and it is something where it's like the older you get, like your relationship to that movie and that performance changes so much. Like as you go from being Charlie to being like Willy Wonka and becoming an adult that's still like struggling with being an adult and like being a child at the same time, like having those sort of like childish desires and fantasies, but having to live in this adult world. Like that is something you identify so much with as you start growing up, that Willy Wonka character encapsulates it in a way that like almost no other character I've ever seen.
Well, let's talk about that, because I did, the night he died, I watched Willy Wonka.
Right, yeah.
And it was weird because I have a DVD of that movie, but I so remember that as a VHS film. Mm-hmm. So just watching it on DVD, I was like, oh my god, this movie has colors I've never seen.
Right.
That was part of it, because my memory of that movie is not in not even Blu-ray, just DVD quality.
Right.
It's in old VHS quality. But I have not watched that movie in a number of years, although it's one that I can basically recite. I've seen it so many times as a kid and whatnot. And then, growing up and stuff. But that performance just blew me away again. And of course it's raw and it's immediate, and there's a lot of moments. I mean, Gene Wilder basically, there are like 3 different points in that movie where he's basically delivering his own eulogy as an actor. Because you just know those moments are going to be in every clip package now. Uh-huh. And I'm thinking particularly of the, Pure Imagination song.
Yeah.
His final speech to Charlie at the end of the movie, which, Jesus Christ, just a great piece of writing and acting.
Yeah.
And just a couple others throughout. If you want the dark eulogy, you can go with the tunnel sequence.
The fucking tunnel sequence is amazing.
No other actor could pull that off.
No, like That is, like, legitimately one of the most terrifying moments in film, and it is, like, part of that is, like, the editing and stuff in that sequence is amazing with, like, all the weird projections on the wall, the tunnel and stuff, but, like, so much of it is Gene Wilder just, like, going completely insane, like, reciting this, like, almost pseudo-poetry on the boat, and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, and it's terrifying, definitely, but as an adult watching it now, it's also so funny.
Yeah.
That scene is hilarious because you just know Wonka is just fucking with these people.
Exactly, yeah.
He's just, and the way Gene Wilder ratchets it up, where it starts very softly, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no one jump. You don't notice the moment where he goes crazy.
Yeah.
It just gets bigger and bigger until he's shouting the poetry, and the kids are just, and the adults too. That's the funniest part, is the adults are more scared than the kids on the boat. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's just a great scene.
Yeah. And my mom was in the room while I was watching some of that, and, you know, when we were watching the Pure Imagination song, she commented, man, he has a beautiful voice. And he did, and he was not really a singer. He didn't do other musicals to my knowledge, and that's the only song in that movie he performs. Although he kind of sings some of the, like, the poetry and whatnot. But he did have this awesome voice. Mm-hmm. He has a very unique voice, very kind of soothing voice almost. And I think of that most in Blazing Saddles, where Jim just has Jim has all these moments where he's just kind of soothing the Cleavon Little character, Black Bart, and trying to be nice, and he can turn that into comedy so easily. One of my favorite Gene Wilder moments ever is when it's just this close-up shot on Cleavon Little, and Gene Wilder's right next to him saying, you know, he's giving him this, you know, the people of the town have been mean to him, and so he's just saying, it's okay, you know, they're simple people, blah, 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 and he says, you know, morons. Yeah. And then Cleavon Little just cracks up. And I don't know if that was like a blooper or something, like where he wasn't supposed to just start laughing, but it feels spontaneous in that way. And it's not, and it never sounds like Wilder is making a joke. It's just who the character is, but he can make you laugh so much.
Yeah.
But back to Wonka, I mean, again, that performance is just so dominant and has so many colors to it and shadings. And again, watching as an adult, as you say, that performance just evolves with you as you go through life, and you see how much sort of sadness there is in the character, but also joy, and that he couches things like disappointment through humor and through being zany. Like, I think he legitimately is disappointed when the kids are disappointing.
Yeah.
You know? But he just kind of bottles it up and goes and does something else crazy. And then sometimes, of course, he just does crazy things, like when it's the what's the line? No, don't stop. Something like that. Yeah.
No, don't stop.
Just great. I saw some people on Twitter explaining that, like, and I did not know this, but pointing out that, like, Wonka is almost like an early gay icon because of how just laid back he gives these insults and quips and stuff. Yeah. And people were pointing that out. Like, I hadn't viewed it through that prism, but that's a great way to look at that.
I
almost.
Can see that for sure.
Yeah, but that's a great movie. Of course, everyone's seen it. And, you know, if I had to, like, list what are, like, the 10 most iconic American performances in film, tough thing to do, I'd have to find a spot for Willy Wonka and Gene Wilder. That's a movie that is so literally timeless that kids are still watching it today, and that movie is fucking dated in some ways. It's hilarious.
Yeah, like, it's like broadcast TV and shit is like a key part of a whole sequence of that movie. That's like kids today have no conception of how that, like, what that is.
The funniest thing to me is early on, the first scene with Charlie is he finds money in the street. And instead of buying chocolate, he brings it home to Grandpa Joe and gives it to him for his tobacco money.
Right, yeah.
And that's great. The reason you know Charlie's a good kid is that he buys his grandpa's tobacco.
Yeah.
But great movie, Gene Wilder, man. So that's Willy Wonka. But then, I mean, the other one, the big one for me is, I mean, you could pick any of the Mel Brooks ones he did. He did 3, The Producers, Young Frankenstein, and Blazing Saddles. Young Frankenstein he has the biggest part in, and he's phenomenal. But Blazing Saddles, to me, I could very easily call the greatest American comedy.
Sure,
he's a huge part of it, and he's so funny. Mm-hmm. He's such a warm presence in that movie.
Yeah,
and a humanizing presence in that film. And a thing that I think grounds the lunacy, because you basically have Cleavon Little playing a live-action Bugs Bunny, where he can just bend the rules of space and time and do crazy things. But the Wilder character is very down-to-earth, and he's just his buddy. He's like the greatest buddy in any movie ever, because they just make friends, and I love that friendship throughout. I love at the end when they have the whole scene in the movie theater and it gets very zany, but then it comes back and they're back in the town, and Gene Wilder is he's like reclining in a chair with his, Stetson over his face, and he's got the popcorn still from the movie, and then they decide to go off, and of course they're on horses, and then they get in a limousine.
Yeah, it's just his quality of just being able to exist as the character. Like, he's just, like, there's just, it's such a weird thing where it feels like he had, like, that presence where, like, you recognize him so much and he has such a unique look to him that, like, you definitely, like, if you've seen Gene Wilder in a movie and then you see another movie that Gene Wilder is in, you recognize him immediately. But at the same time, when you're watching the movie, you never think about him as an actor performing a character. Like, he just so is the character that he's playing, whether it's Willy Wonka or this character in Blazing Saddles,
Yep. No, I'm just thinking of so many moments. Yeah. Like in Blazing Saddles where he says, I can't keep my gun hand steady. And he raises one. It's like, look steady as a rock. He says, yeah, but I shoot with this hand. And it's all crazy. It's so great. And of course, Young Frankenstein. The key scene in that, I think, for everyone is when he's giving the lecture. Yeah. And he's trying to explain, I am Frankenstein. And at one point he said, he jabs the knife, the scalpel into his leg. Class dismissed. And he pulls it out. But that whole movie, there's the putting on the Ritz scene. That's one of the movies where, it's one of his biggest parts in a film because he's not a supporting player at all in that he is the main character. And it's where he really lets his sort of the angry side of his persona fly because he's playing this version of Frankenstein who is so deeply repressed. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. The stuff with Mel Brooks, they only did those 3 films together, but those are probably Mel Brooks' 3 most famous films. Producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, and for good reason. That's crazy to think, Mel Brooks outlived him. Mel Brooks is in his 90s at this point. Yeah. But, and that, people have talked about there's so many other sort of gems in his catalog, many of which I haven't seen because they're not as, maybe famous or classic. But I kind of feel like I have to reach out and see some of these. For instance, Gene Wilder directed one movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's actually coming out on Blu-ray this fall for the first time. I don't even know if it was ever on DVD. I'd have to look. It's kind of a rare film. But it's something about like the adventures of Sherlock Jr., and it's like a Sherlock Holmes riff. And Gene Wilder co-wrote it, and I guess he originally asked Mel Brooks to direct it, and Mel Brooks said, no, you should direct this. You know what to do with this material. And apparently it's a cult classic. People love that movie. And it's just by coincidence it's finally kind of coming out to a bigger audience on Blu-ray this year. And I'll have to pick that up and check it out because that sounds cool.
Yeah.
So... yeah, but that's Gene Wilder. We really could devote a whole episode to his movies. Didn't have the time to prepare that. But, man, I had a good time watching Willy Wonka the other night, even though some parts very tough to get through when this immortal screen character is gone.
Yeah, no, like I haven't rewatched the whole movie since he passed away, but like I spent like most of that evening just watching clips on YouTube of all my favorite like scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. Good career. Cool guy. One of those guys had no enemies in Hollywood. Everyone just agreed he was just the nicest person.
Yeah.
So what a career, what a life. And we will obviously talk about his movies more in the future because we have in the past. And
yeah, no, like it's like we said, Willy Wonka is like one of those defining movies of our childhood. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to some stuff. Basically, I think how we're going to arrange this is we're going to start with just random stuff at the beginning. We're going to do some news, and then we're going to do some... well, we'll figure it out. Yeah. We've got some news. We got some betas we played, because for some reason this was the month of betas.
Like the past 2 weeks have just been so beta heavy. It's like I've kept on trying to play No Man's Sky, and I've gotten like some hours in, but every time I started to play No Man's Sky, I was like, oh, hey, this new beta is out. Well, I should probably play that. Fuck, okay.
Well, I've been playing 2 games. I've continued... I got back into Stardew Valley, which I talked about before on this podcast. It came out for Mac. I played a lot of it, and I was still not sure if I liked it or not. I think I was in the weird position a lot of people are with No Man's Sky now, where they've played it for like 50 hours and weren't sure if they liked it.
Right, yeah.
And I was kind of there with Stardew Valley. But for whatever reason, I got over a hump with that game, and I'm up to like, Steam says 45 hours played. And I'm not sure how accurate that is because the clock had been fluctuating because Steam had some sync issues, but it's around there. I kind of play this game while I'm doing other things, watching TV or whatever, but I'm really loving this game. If you don't know, Stardew Valley is sort of the indie hit of this year on PC and Mac, and I think it's on Linux too now. And it'll be coming out on PS4 and Xbox One later this year is the plan. But it's a farming simulator sort of in the style of Harvest Moon, but with some Minecraft or Terraria or those kind of crafting games thrown in for good measure.
Yeah.
And it's its own thing beyond that, too. And it's a pretty simple game, but it gets deeper the more you get into it. I've realized now that I've played so much of it, it really is a game that you're only going to really realize what is good and what is smart about it if you play a shit ton of it. And I can totally understand if that sounds like a turnoff. If you're like, I don't really want to play 40 hours of the farming simulator,
right?
Then it's probably not for you, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to say this is a game like Doom or something that I would say everyone should go out and play Doom.
Right.
Unless you just are afraid of gore or something. Doom is, I think, pretty widely, people who play console games would love that game, right?
Yeah, everyone should play Doom.
Yes.
Even if you don't like gore. Fuck it, play Doom.
Get over it.
Yeah. It's that good. It's just that good.
Keep a vomit bucket nearby.
Yeah.
It's worth it. No, but Stardew Valley, so like I said, I think it's going to be kind of a niche thing, but I'm really loving it. And I've even started to realize, I think, you were talking last time, we talked about No Man's Sky, about how No Man's Sky does a good job quietly thematizing things without saying anything about it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to No Man's Sky, it's sort of about the vastness of space and about the impossibility of ownership and these sorts of things. I think Stardew Valley does something similar where it does a lot of good thematizing of sort of economics as you play it, because you have to build your farm, you start with nothing, you have to get some seeds, plant those, you get money out of those, and slowly you can get more and more. And the more I play it, I really am like learning things about supply and demand and things like this, and about how sort of investment is this weird like exponential thing, right, where you have to kind of keep at it, and eventually you're like, you have so much and now you're reinvesting, and it becomes this interesting thing also about where like early on you have to do everything super hands-on. You have to individually water every tile. You have to, till everything with your animals. You have to feed the hay out individually. And the more money you have and the more you put into it, obviously you get to a size where you can't individually manage everything. So now you're building sprinklers so the plants will automatically water themselves. And you're building these bigger and more complex barns where the animals will be automatically fed. And
so instead of bringing like a new workforce and like resupplying the economy with more jobs in the town, you're just completely mechanizing everything. And just
you are mechanizing
a capitalist empire.
It kind of is. And I do think I would love a version of this game that was maybe a little more built out, and there was a point where you could hire like helping hands. Because that would be cool. Like, it wouldn't be like a 10-hour mark thing, but like where I am, I could absolutely use help around the farm, because you also realize there's a point where your business grows and you have so much stuff, so much of it is automated, and there's still too much to do in a given day.
Right.
Like with all the animals, like I have like 30 livestock at this point, and I have 4 barn/coops to take care of. I'm planting at least 450 to 500 plants like are on my farm per day, and I have way more space to build out. But it is like this fascinating thing where it becomes exhilarating when you get over the hump and you realize how much you can build out. You just have to kind of stick with it until the point you can, and then it becomes this exponential thing where you're almost scared of it. Like, there's so much going on that you have to invest in.
You see the face of capitalism,
exactly,
and you realize what you are a part of, and you realize you spent all of your time just amassing all this stuff, but you never stop to think about, well, what I actually want the stuff for. Like, I never wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to be an author, but, I've just completely lost track of that, and now I've made this monster that is controlling me, and I'm not controlling it.
No, but I do love it for that reason, because I think of like where I started and where I am now, and it really is a game where you put in a lot of time, but that time pays off because things change so much in the amount of stuff I have. I really would compare it to kind of the rush I got from playing Minecraft back in the day, where you would put in the work in Minecraft and then you could build these really cool things. Of course, Stardew Valley is sort of, it's a 2D game, it's not a 3D game, but at the same time I feel like you get more rewards for what you do because you're literally making money and paying off, and you have people to interact with and stuff. I'm very close to marrying Abigail, the shop owner's daughter.
Okay.
So that's going to be fun. I have the house all built out for us.
Do you think she loves you for you, or do you think she loves you for your money?
Because part of the courting process is you have to bring them gifts.
Okay, yeah.
And I am bringing her more and more extravagant gifts. I really think it might be a money thing, because literally now, here's how it works, Sean, when I go a courting. Okay, I have a horse on my farm that I've gotten, which took a while, and I get my horse and I ride into town. And on the way into town, I pick flowers, and then I bring the flowers to Abigail, and she is in her daddy's shop, and she's like, "Oh, for me? I'm so glad you came to talk to me today." And it really does feel like I'm in a shitty like fairy tale movie.
You're such an asshole in that game.
You really are.
You ride the fucking horse into town.
Yep. But no, I got a pretty cool farm. So my sheep are giving birth to other sheep. I got wool.
That's how that goes.
The pigs are out finding truffles. I'm milking the goats and cows. It's pretty crazy. The worst thing right now is I can't figure out how to make grass grow, and so all my animals are underfed because I can't get enough hay.
Hey, if you want a realistic simulation of like livestock raising, there you go.
The livestock is the hardest and most arduous part, and you don't need to do it, but it gives you another revenue stream. So, and then there's a whole mining part, but I'm also at a point where like I kind of have what I need from the mines. Like I've stripped them bare. It really is this weird like automation message it's giving you. You could do it in that kind of reading where you're becoming an awful capitalist asshole.
Yeah, like I just want this game like 100 hours in to be like the end of Citizen Kane or something, where it's like you just die like alone and cold and afraid in this like mansion filled with stuff that you don't care about, and Abigail has like left you years ago because she never loved you. She always hated you.
Yes, but it's a fun game. So I'm curious how they're going to adapt it to consoles, because I think it could actually work better there. Like I know it has controller support, but I'm usually playing it with my laptop on my lap, so I'm not going to bother getting a controller out. But the keyboard controls could be a little clunky sometimes, so I feel like the controller stuff could work even better. But
cool.
Yeah, good game. The other game I started playing, because this is something I've wanted to play for a while, but it was on sale on PSN this week. They had a bundle of the Banner Saga 1 and 2 on PlayStation 4. And if you don't know, the Banner Saga is a game that's developed by sort of ex-employees from BioWare and maybe some other kind of RPG companies. I know BioWare was the main one. And they did a Kickstarter for it, so it's one of the more successful Kickstarted games. And it's not quite an episodic game in the way we think of like an episode coming out every few months. But like, there's 2 games out right now: Banner Saga 1, which came out in 2014, and Banner Saga 2, which came out this year. And it's almost like the Hobbit trilogy, where it's like one story, not in that it's like totally elongated, but just that it's one story told over 3 parts. So like, you get to the end of Banner Saga 1, and there's technically a climax, but you're still just getting into the story because it's only like the first 10 hours.
Right.
But it was ported to PS4 this year, and I got this bundle. And it's an interesting game. It's a mix of like tactical RPG, a la Fire Emblem or XCOM or Final Fantasy Tactics.
Right.
But it's also very much a visual novel, or something in the vein of Oregon Trail, where you're moving along and you have choices to make, and there's survival mechanics with the number of people you have in your caravan. And it is a fucking phenomenal game.
Yeah, I've heard really good stuff about it, and I've been interested in playing it for a while.
You would love it.
Yeah.
And it's still on sale, to my knowledge. This PSN sale is still going on, and you get the 2 games for, I think, $23, which is pretty good because they're $20 individually. So it's kind of like buy one, get one free almost.
Right.
And, the save transfers from 1 to 2. I've completed all of Banner Saga 1. I'm in the first chapter of Banner Saga 2. And, man, I couldn't be loving this game anymore. The coolest thing about it is the art. The art in this game is unbelievable. It's all sort of 2D paintings, and it is done in the style, I believe the guy's name is something like Awind Earl, and he is the painter who worked on and heavily influenced Disney's Sleeping Beauty.
Okay.
And if you've only seen Sleeping Beauty on VHS, you might not remember what's so special about that movie. But if you've seen it on DVD or Blu-ray when they were able to do the full aspect ratio and everything, Sleeping Beauty was actually made in full widescreen, one of the few animated movies ever to do that, at least 2D animated movies. It might have even been CinemaScope, it's super wide. Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Hateful Eight,
right.
That kind of wide. And so it's these big, almost scroll-like paintings. I think it is probably Disney's most outwardly beautiful movie, because it's just got this completely singular art style. It looks like a series of paintings you would go to a fancy museum to see. And Banner Saga is its prime artistic influence. And it is done really at the same level of quality. It's not moving images so much, so it's obviously easier to produce. Right. But it is amazing how every one of those images is just so detailed and replete with color and just this fascinating imagery. It really is unlike anything else I've ever seen in a video game. And the character designs fall into that too. That's one thing that's weird about Sleeping Beauty, the movie, is that the character designs look like normal Disney characters, while the backgrounds are really special. With Banner Saga, it all kind of looks of a piece, which is really nice. And it's set in kind of a Norse setting, so it's kind of Viking-esque, but it's in a kind of fictional world.
Does it have like magic and monsters and that kind of stuff?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, there's two races. There's humans and Varls, and Varls are like these big giant monsters, and they sort of have an uneasy truce. They live together, but there's this new enemy that has popped up called the Dredge, and they are overrunning the world while a bunch of other threats that I won't spoil are coming up. It's very apocalyptic. Like the first line of the game starts with a prologue, and the first line is
"We're fucked."
It's the gods are dead.
Okay, yeah.
So it starts in a world where there were gods and they're all dead. And one of the ways this manifests is that there's this god that gave birth to all the Varl, and it was like the father of all the Varl. And now that god is dead, so there will never be any more Varl.
Okay.
They live for a long time, but they are going to go extinct. And not only are the gods dead, but for like the last few months in this world, the sun has not moved in the sky. And so in the continent they're on, it's daylight all the time. So stuff like that. So it's a very dark start to the game, and it is a dark kind of depressing grind throughout the whole thing, and very intentionally so. Like all the choices you make are between sort of bad and worse, that sort of thing. And it's a fascinating game. It's a beautifully told story. It is frequently a really great story on its own. The combat in like the tactical stuff is very good. I get a very similar rush out of this as I do in Fire Emblem, even though I think it's very different than other tactical RPGs I've played. There are certain things about it that make it different, like these different sort of just HP systems that they do. But it's very strategic, it's really well done, and it's interesting in that there are a couple of battles you could lose and it'll do a game over screen, but for the most part, the battles you can lose and the game goes on, and it really encourages you not to like be reloading, not to be remaking choices. It's just to go on instinct and see where the story will take you, and I love that about it. Because a lot of games that are sort of choice-reliant, or like Fire Emblem have permadeath and things, you are often reloading to try to get the best state. That's not what you're trying at all in the Banner Saga, and you have to actually, I had to like retrain myself not to do that, because clearly the way to play the game is just let the chips fall where they may, and follow the story, and then maybe one day I'll go back and replay it, and see some other things, because some of the choices wind up being very big and meaningful. This is not a Telltale game, where they tell you it's meaningful, but it's not.
So Odin will remember that.
Yeah. I mean, basically, just the way the first game ends, there could be multiple very different versions of Banner Saga 2. And I'm in Banner Saga 2, and I'm really curious to see what like the other side of it is based on my choices. So, and that's the kind of choice-based game I love, where you know there's other stuff going on. And that's why the visual novel side of it is so cool, because that allows them to write so much and do so much with it.
So like the story stuff is not super overproduced so that they can make a huge amount of it without like throwing a bunch of art assets and like voice acting and sound effects and music and everything at it all the time.
Absolutely. So there's so many cool systems in the game, I couldn't even go into all of them, but you know, when you're not in the battles, part of what you do is you're basically just traveling, and there's a counter on screen that says how many days you've gone, how many of the different kinds of people you have in your caravan, and along the way you have to make choices of when you're going to rest, how you manage your supplies. People can die. There's parts of the game where it's so like immersive, where like, you know, really bad things will happen, and then I'm on the road and I have no supplies, and I have to get from point A to B, and I have to, at the end of every day, like 10 people in my caravan are just going to die because we don't have the supplies, and there's nothing I can do about it. And it really makes you kind of live those scenarios, while it asks you to use a lot of your imagination. And I actually think games like this, with these kind of complex stories, I tend to enjoy the more of your imagination they let you use.
Right.
It's one of the things that I think we've talked about before makes Persona work so well, is that it's not overproduced. It is, it's very simple in its graphics. And of what I've seen of Persona 5, they're obviously building a lot of that out more, but not to the point where they're making it like a new Final Fantasy game where you just see everything and it's all voiced and it's all...
Yeah, and it's all like movie quality cutscenes and stuff like that,
Which is cool, but I also think there's a downside to that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anyway, loving the Banner Saga. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. The PS4 version of Banner Saga 1 is not super well optimized. It's not that it runs poorly, it's just that there's a lot of loading screens and the text is too small. Like, you can read it, but it's just a little uncomfortable. And then you jump into Banner Saga 2, which was produced with consoles in mind, and they've done a couple of things to make it run better. The text looks clearer, things like that. But it's totally playable, and you can also get it on any other platform you want. It's even on iPhones and stuff. And that wouldn't be the way I'd recommend to play it, but you don't... Really, there's nothing complex with the controls, so that would work too. But, man, loving these games. If Banner Saga 2 is as good as I've heard, and everyone says it's much better even than the first game, that could definitely be a top 10 game for me this year. So
Cool. Yeah. I'll probably end up getting that on that sale then.
Yeah.
I've been eyeing Banner Saga since it came out like 2 years ago, and have
Right.
like gotten this close to buying it like so many times, and it was like, I don't know, like I've got other stuff I need to do, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll finally take the plunge on that one.
So betas excluded. What game stuff have you been doing, Sean?
Well, like I said, I've put like probably like 5 or 6 more hours into No Man's Sky since the last time we did this, and so like not a lot to talk about there, but I'm still enjoying it. I finally, for the first time, like I haven't actually gone there, but I saw a system off to the side where someone else had been. Like that ping thing finally said like, oh yeah, someone's been over here. I was like, oh, okay. Like I thought it was interesting that I played that game for maybe like 20 hours total at this point, and that was the first time that's happened. So that was a momentous day. I'm also now really struggling to find names for things at this point. Like I've gone through basically every single mythological pantheon I can think of for like, because that's how I've been like doing system and planet names. So then I just got down to like naming them after like Godzilla monsters and shit like that. 'Cause it's like, eventually I'm just gonna have to start like naming them after Persona characters or something. I don't know. Like I'm running pretty thin on name ideas for planets at this point.
What I did right off the bat was I was like, this is going to be tough. So every planet I've done in No Man's Sky, I've named after my dog. So it's Phoebe Planet 1, Phoebe Planet 2, Phoebe Planet 3.
That's like I don't want to fall back on that, because my thing has been like finding a theme for a system and naming every planet after that theme, and it makes me feel good when I leave that when someone else comes across this that is like really into fucking like Japanese like Shintoism, they'll be like, oh hey, look at all these planets named after all these like obscure Japanese gods. And it's like,
it's great. I will say though, like I have usually my dog is like in the room while I'm playing games, and so I'm just like, you know what, Phoebe, I'm gonna name the whole fucking sky after you.
Okay,
I'm very obsessive.
Yeah. Okay, sure, but yeah, it's only Phoebe Sky.
Yes,
that's the sequel to No Man's Sky. That's your personal mod that you've been making.
Yes,
very diligently. But other than No Man's Sky, the only other non-beta game I've been playing any has been Hitman. Still, I'm still Hitmanning because they brought out, I think it was basically around the time we recorded the last podcast where, because I think I had started playing it, but we only talked about the Persona 3 movie on the last one because that was an emotionally draining experience and couldn't talk about Hitman then. But so the 4th episode, which is set in Bangkok, came out, and it's all in this big like hotel in Bangkok, and you have to assassinate this like douchebag indie rock star guy who basically like murdered this other celebrity who he was dating, and like so he's an asshole and he's really satisfying to kill, and you also have to kill his manager, and it's like that game is still great. Like that the Bangkok episode is awesome. The thing that I really love that they managed to do with each new map in the game is that while the core mechanics and everything are still the same, there are specific things about the map that force you to play it very differently. So like this Bangkok hotel map is designed in such a way that there aren't a lot of doors that are like key locked, so you can't use your lockpick, which is an item you can bring into the level, which is for all the other levels. Like, it would be crazy to me that you don't bring in a lockpick unless you know exactly where you're going and there's no locked doors there, because it's such a convenient way to get access to different areas. But in the Bangkok map, there's like 2 or 3 doors that you can use your lockpick on, and other than that, it's all like key cards because it's a hotel. So a huge amount of the map is about knowing where to find different key cards to get different access to different areas, and you can find all these notes left for the hotel staff lying around that tell you information about some of the guests and like other opportunities that might lead to different assassinations and stuff like that. And there's a lot of other little tiny examples of little like very custom things that are in the Bangkok map that are only in the Bangkok map, like the Agent 47 has a hotel room that like you can go in, and so like the first time I did the map, I just like walked in right up to the front desk, and you can just like ring up, and there's like, oh, Mr. Reaper, like here's your hotel room, and you just walk up to your hotel room, and they're like, cool, like it's this like beautiful hotel. The map is so detailed, and then I saw you can go over to your phone and you can call room service, and I was like, I know what to do with this. So you just call up room service. A dude comes up to like make your bed or something, and they actually have recorded multiple lines for him to say, like there's like, my mini fridge isn't stocked and stuff like that you get to say. And then the guy comes up for room service, he goes to look at the thing, and then you just knock him out, like throw him in a closet, take his clothes, and now you're a bellhop, and you can go anywhere in this whole wing of the map and stuff like that. And yeah, like the Bangkok.
I like that Agent 47 seems to have a weird sense of humor.
He does.
Games.
Like, these games are very funny. They have a grim sense of humor. Like, probably the best assassination opportunity of this Bangkok map one, because I've done most of them at this point, is one way to assassinate the indie rock star dude who's taken over this whole, like, half of the hotel, like, this whole, like, kind of one wing is all his people, and so you need to get, like, very specific disguises to go after him. But you can find one disguise, which is this drummer who's like the new drummer for the band, and so they haven't met him yet. And so the guy arrives at the hotel, you knock him out, you put on his clothes, and so you disguise yourself as their drummer, and you go up and you get up into their place, and you go and then they ask you like, oh, hey man, what's up? Hey, can you just play us a little like drum fill to just see how good you are? And so Agent 47, who's this like trained assassin wearing the goofiest fucking like rock star drummer outfit with the stupid hat and sunglasses and this fucking vest, he just goes over to this drum kit, sits down, complete blank stare on his face, just staring straight ahead, no expression, just rips out this amazing drum solo right there in front of everyone. It just gets up and is like, oh, you're like a machine, man. Cool. Like, whatever, dude. That's awesome. It's just like this weird, Agent 47 is the world's greatest assassin because he has learned how to master everything in the off chance that someone's going to ask him to perform a drum solo, and if he can't do it, it's going to blow his cover. So he can do whatever he needs to dedicate himself to the hit. It's really good.
The more you talk about the Hitman, this game, which I'm definitely going to try to play before the end of the year, at some point soon here. Although it gets more daunting the more of these come out, so I've got to jump in soon, I feel like. It sounds to me, and correct me if maybe I'm off base on this game sounds like what I feel like we said Metal Gear Solid 5 kind of should have been.
Yeah.
Which is that what Metal Gear Solid 5 did so well were the basic gameplay mechanics and the way you could explore these spaces and do different things. But then the downfall of Metal Gear Solid 5 was the open world stuff was just way too big, way too empty.
The mother-based stuff took up way too much time and was kind of a meaningless grind and that stuff.
But the best thing of all of Metal Gear Solid 5 is the Ground Zeroes part of it.
Yeah, just going and like infiltrating a base and scoping it out and like taking out targets and stuff, yeah.
And I still go back to Ground Zeroes sometimes because I think that one map is just so dense and fun to explore. And I feel like if Metal Gear Solid 5 had been a series of those, I would be on board calling it like an all-time great game. And it sounds like Hitman is sort of what we might have wanted out of that.
Yeah, I think that is actually... I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's a good comparison, that what Hitman managed to do is find a new business model that also enabled a different structural model that fits the way those games are designed in a way that the traditional $60 package typically doesn't, of just like, here's all the levels and everything, especially nowadays where like a lot of gamers do expect something like Metal Gear Solid 5 that is like, if you're going to make this big $60 game, you want it to be like 80 hours long and have this huge... I mean, Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't actually have a huge story, but a story that spans somehow a huge amount of playtime, no matter how thin you must stretch it, and has like all these unlockables and grinds and stuff, and this big open world to explore, even if that's actually to the detriment of what the game does well, where if Metal Gear Solid 5 was a series of large individual bases instead, like specific sort of bespoke designed areas that you could infiltrate and like complete different objectives in, I think that would have been a much better sort of design aesthetic for that game. And then even if they did the episodic kind of thing, I think that would have also worked the way it has for Hitman.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just had that on my mind because Metal Gear Solid 5 is in the news again because they're making a definitive edition. And
they're making the world's most unnecessary spin-off title in the history of video games, Metal Gear Survive.
And their Twitter account were dicks to people.
Did you see all that part? No.
Oh, yeah, no, there's this whole thing where people were asking, well, you're making this definitive edition. Are you going to finish that level you never finished?
Yeah, which I think that's everyone thought of when you're, like, because every game is now using definitive edition instead of remastered or whatever for its title. And, like, when you say Metal Gear Solid 5 definitive edition, it feels like the definitive edition of that game should, A, take all the online bullshit that they added in after the fact, take all that back out, and then also, can you actually finish the story? Could we definitively have a finished version of Metal Gear Solid 5, please?
And the people on the Metal Gear Twitter, who obviously were not involved in the making of the game at all because all those people were fired, because Konami loves the people who make the money.
Yeah, all of them left to go follow Kojima. Like the ones
Right.
that didn't follow, they get fired, just left.
Yes. They were explaining, like, no, it is done. What do you mean? It's like, well, there was this bonus mission, like, that was only for the true fans who bought the collector's edition early on. And it's like, so you're not finished? Like, no, the game is finished. Like, they were being total dicks about it. It was hilarious. So.
We have, I mean, they had, like, that collector's edition came out with, like, all the Mission 51 or whatever it was stuff that, like, we know the game isn't finished. I mean, anyone who's played the game knows that, like, whatever, like, state the game came out in, the story itself did not reach its completed state the way that anyone making that game really intended it to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So...
Although, before we move on, I just realized there was a Hitman story I was going to tell, but it happened so long ago that I almost forgot. And this is not on the Bangkok map, but on the Marrakesh map, which after I played some of the Bangkok map, I went back to some of the other ones to complete some challenges I just hadn't yet. And I had what is probably the most ridiculous close call I have ever had in any Hitman game. And so I just want to relay this story because it's fucking ridiculous. And I saved some of the footage of it, though the share thing didn't get quite all of it. But so basically, in the Marrakesh map, one of the targets you have to assassinate is this guy who's this sort of political target who's doing all this bad stuff in this sort of Middle Eastern country. And he's holed up in this consulate area, and you need to go in and assassinate him. So you go in and, like, you know, just sort of disguise yourself, get into the consulate, and find a way to assassinate him. And the challenge specifically for assassinating him I was trying to do was you need to kill him by drowning him. And this is sort of a somewhat generic challenge that most of the maps have, of that one of the ways that you can assassinate people is by drowning them. And when Hitman says drowning them, they typically mean drown them in a toilet, because that's the easiest way to get them to go to somewhere you can drown them. And how you do that is you feed them, or to put in their food or drink, rat poison or emetic poison that will cause them to vomit. So they will run to the toilet, go to vomit in the toilet, and then either, if you're very nice before they vomit, or if you're a complete asshole after they vomit, you jam their head into the toilet and drown them. And that's one of the ways that you can assassinate a target. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for this consulate guy. I'm going to assassinate him by drowning him in the toilet, because that's always fun. And for the Marrakesh map, very specifically, this is the hardest one to do that one for, because there is only, as far as I can find, there's only one drink or food item that he really ever goes to, that you can anticipate he will go to, and that is in his office, which is extremely secure. There is one glass of wine that you can be basically assured every once in a while he'll come into his office and take a sip out of this glass of wine. So having played that map multiple times, I knew that was the case. And so going in with this mission of wanting to get that challenge, I infiltrated the consulate, did all my stuff, got there. And then I guess I'll have to describe, the room is set up in such a way, it's super secure, where it's kind of a big L, where at kind of like the base of the L is one door that leads in, that there's all that you need a security key, card key to go and get into, and there's always a guard standing right in front of it. So that door is basically a no-go unless you find one specific outfit to disguise yourself with. But then at the sort of the top of the L, there's another door that is locked that you can lockpick, that goes into a room that is another room that has one door that you have to lockpick to get into. So it's fairly secure on that side, but if you can find the hole in the security to sort of have just enough time to lockpick it without anyone noticing, you can get in and get into the room. So that's what I did. I get into the top of the L, and there's this long conference table that goes down to the end, where the base of the L and sort of the foot of the L is, and that's where the glass of wine is. So I get in at the top of the room, I sneak in, I'm crouching, and I'm sneaking over, and there's one guard that is always stationed in that room, and he's standing right by where the glass of wine is. So I just go in, I'm not trying to get a super good score, I'm not trying to go in killing no one but the target kind of thing. So I just pop in the head with my silent pistol, I go up, I have my rat poison, I stick it in the drink, I'm everything's great, this is perfect. All I have to do now is go wait by the nearest toilet and wait a couple of minutes, and this guy's going to surely run in. But then something in the back of my head was well, I should make sure the coast is clear. And I go into my Hitman vision that allows me to see where basically where the target is. And I see he is about to enter the room from the way I just entered it at the top of the L. So I'm standing at the other end. I've just grabbed the body as well. So I killed the guard, poison the drink, grab the body, because I'm going to go drag the body back through the way I came in to hide him in a closet so that the target doesn't see him and get freaked out, because obviously the target wouldn't drink. So I have my hands on this dead dude, my hands bloody from just fucking killing him, and I look at my Hitman vision and I see the target is about to enter the room from the door I came in at like the far end of the conference table. I'm like, I am completely fucked here because I'm in a room I'm not supposed to be in. I'm trespassing, so he would immediately get freaked out. Plus, I'm holding a dead body of his, like, personal guard. He's really not going to like this. I have, like, 2 seconds before he opens this door. So I drag the body, and I go, and I just drag it around the other side of the conference table right when the dude opens the door. And the conference table is just high enough that while you're crouching and holding a body, he can't quite get line of sight on you. So the guy comes into the room from the opposite end. I'm holding the body, and as he's walking towards the glass of wine, I'm dragging the body around the opposite end of the table to try to keep the angle such that he won't quite see me. So that I drag the body all the way to the end where the door is, basically. And so now he's walked over to the other end where I was with the guard, takes a drink of the wine, then like drops the wine glass and starts running, so then I have to start dragging the body back, because if he gets to the other end of the conference table, he'll be able to see me holding this body, and he like it'll break everything about like his AI routine. So like now I'm dragging the body back while this dude runs out. He runs out the door. I drop the body and immediately was like, oh fuck, and I just sprint right after him, like kick the bathroom door open, drown him in the toilet right when he gets in there. I'm like, I cannot believe that this just fucking worked. I cannot believe I managed to, like, keep everything just right on the edge of that knife long enough to get this dude to drink the poison, to run to the toilet so I could fucking drown him. Like, my heart was pounding so hard because I was so close to getting caught, just, like, constantly for this whole, like, 1 minute sequence of him walking along the other side of this motherfucking table.
Here's the thing. So they've made 2 Hitman movies now.
Yes.
I've seen one of them. Apparently it was horrible. They're both shitty.
Yeah.
And they're both like super serious. You could make a great Hitman movie if you did stuff like that.
Yeah, if
that
it was like a
comedy,
like a dark comedy,
yes. That sounds like a great scene from a movie. Like I can see it now. He's got the guard, he's like, wait, where's the target?
Oh shit, dude.
Yeah.
It's like just stay right behind the table, like holding this fucking dead body the entire time. Yeah, that game is really good because that's probably the most extreme circumstance I've been in, but like, you know, you have tons of little moments like that of like really weird shit that you manage to do to sort of like just keep this like this castle of cards from collapsing in on itself, that you've sort of this elaborate scheme you've constructed to try to kill the target in a specific way.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah. I love this game. I've never even played it. It's great.
It has that effect. Like, that's how it was before I started playing, is I'd seen just like videos and heard people on podcasts talking about it. It was like, this game just seems like the best thing somehow, even without having played it.
Yeah. And we should say, they did announce, Square Enix announced the full season release of the game. There will be a physical release in January for PS4 and Xbox One, if you wanted to wait for that. And they're calling it Season 1.
Yes.
So
that feels like they are pretty dedicated to hopefully doing a Season 2, which I think would be awesome. Like
this sounds like a much better Season 2 than like Walking Dead Telltale Season 2.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just fits itself to that episodic model so well that I can see them doing this for a while before it ever getting old. Especially, as I said, if they keep on finding ways to keep the maps feel fresh and different and add little unique things like the hotel sort of like mechanics that separate it from everything.
There's so many fun things I can just imagine you can do with that kind of system.
Yeah, with like so many different interesting locations and stuff you can go to that would add different little sort of like wiggles to what you have to do to manage this stuff.
Nice. Well, let's go ahead and talk about a couple of movies, because I actually wound up seeing a bunch of films these last 2 weeks, and all of them really good. So I want to start with one that I think is going to be of interest to podcast listeners, both because it's the #1 movie in America, and it's a follow-up to something we've talked about before, which is Don't Breathe. This is a horror movie. It's been at the top of the box office for 2 weeks. First time a horror movie has done that since 2014. Kind of interesting. This has actually been... Horror is one of the few genres that has done well this year. like at the box office, as a bunch of other stuff has flopped. But why I wanted to see Don't Breathe is it's from the director, Fede Alvarez, who did Evil Dead, the remake.
Oh, okay.
And it's in fact the whole creative team. It's the same writer, co-writer, because he also co-wrote the movie. It's Jane Levy, who was the star of Evil Dead. Right. She's the star here. And I think the same composer, Roque Banos, who I loved his music in Evil Dead, love it here. And so just like on faith, I liked that Evil Dead remake so much
very good movie.
that I'm like, I will totally see whatever these guys do. And I'm not even that much of a horror person, I should say. I don't go to see a lot of horror, but I really liked that Evil Dead remake, and this sounded like a cool idea for a movie, because the whole premise of Don't Breathe is it's these three kids. Jane Levy is kind of the main character, and they are in Detroit, so their lives are shit. It is funny how much this movie uses Detroit as a shorthand for, like, bad lives.
That's just efficient filmmaking.
It is. No, it totally is. Like, these guys have a really good handle on, like, horror 101 of, like, how you give a character motivations in one scene so you can just jump into the action and not have to waste time. It's great. But they need some money. The Jane Levy character wants to get out of town. I thought for the whole movie she, like, had a daughter and she was, like, a teenage mom, but apparently it's just her younger sister.
Okay.
So, whatever. They did not communicate that super well to me. But anyway.
Younger sister, daughter is the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, because she wants to take care of her and, like, get her out of Detroit, which we all would.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they need money to get out of Detroit, and so they rob houses, and they, like, take money and stuff. And one of the kids who's played by, I forget, it's the kid who looks like Logan Lerman, but isn't. I think his name's Dylan Minnette. It's like these two young, like, male actors. I always get confused because they look the same. But anyway, And his like dad works with a security company so they can get into the houses easily. And they hear about this one house where like this old dude lives. He's like an Iraq vet, and he got an insurance payout, and he's got like $1 million in his house. So they're going to go steal his money.
Yeah, go steal money from a veteran. Like, really nice assholes.
It's okay. The vet turns out to be an evil dude, so it's okay.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I don't know about the messaging there, but whatever. I give it a bit of leeway. Okay. But anyway, they turn out when it gets there, the dude's blind, and they think, oh man, this is going to be really easy.
They're stealing money from a blind veteran?
Yes.
They're the worst people in the world!
Also, he has the insurance money because his daughter got killed.
What the fuck?
Yes. Don't worry. Turns out he's evil.
Okay.
It's okay. That is probably the biggest problem with the movie is if you think too hard, they're being super assholes, and the only reason your sympathy stays with them is it turns out the blind dude is a bigger asshole.
And they're stuck in Detroit, so,
yes.
you can all sympathize with that.
Yes, so they're desperate, But anyway, so the whole premise is they're stuck in this house with this blind dude who's like crazy and is up to some weird shit that I won't spoil, although it gets really fucked up at a certain point. And the blind dude is played, and he doesn't even have a name. He's credited in the credits as the blind man. But he's played by Stephen Lang, who was the villain in Avatar.
Oh, okay.
One of the best parts of Avatar, I think. He's really good in that. And he's really good in this. Like, he has very little dialogue, and I did not recognize him at all, because, of course, he's got prostheses and stuff to make his eyes look blind and whatnot. But he's really good. He's very menacing. Jane Levy's very good again. And it's a really good, inventive horror movie. It's very unsettling. Some people said it's more like a thriller. I'm okay lumping it in as horror. Horror can be thriller and vice versa.
Yeah, but that genre distinction is, like, so slight at some point.
But, it's very inventive. There's some just great filmmaking going on. Like, when they get into the house, they do this long, long shot, like a one take, where they just go through the whole house and you kind of see the geography. And the way they do that all in one constructed take, it's probably, actually faked in some way.
Right.
But either way, it's very impressive. So I loved that. A lot of just the staging and the way they, choreograph things for the individual set pieces is really inventive and well done. It's just, I came out thinking a lot of what I thought of the Evil Dead remake, which is that I don't know if I would call this like a great movie, but it's so good at what it sets out to do that I'm just very impressed by the filmmaking craft on display.
Yeah.
So I liked that about it, and I would definitely recommend it, especially if you liked that movie. This is very different than Evil Dead, because, it's not nearly as gory or anything.
Right.
Not that I think any movie could be nearly as gory as...
Yeah, I mean, the end of Evil Dead gets pretty intense.
Yes. But I think it does a lot of the same things well. And there's just some of the cinematography. There's particularly one shot in this movie that I utterly loved, and near the end with the Jane Levy character, and just the way it uses some lighting and stuff. I think you'll know it when you see it. And that should be, to me, the shot the movie ends on, and it goes on like 3 minutes too long. But that's, movies do that. So whatever. I would cut it somewhere else, but I didn't make the movie, so that's okay. So I liked that.
Cool.
Then I saw the movie Southside with You. And if you haven't heard of this, this is a Sundance hit from earlier this year, finally in theaters. And it's about the first date between Barack and Michelle Obama.
Oh, okay.
And it sounds like kind of a cheesy idea for a movie, like a little gimmicky.
Yeah.
But it turns out to be anything but. Like, it's really, really good. It's both of these movies, by the way, Don't Breathe and Southside with You, are like 80 minutes long. I love that. Just go see an 80-minute movie. It's great.
Yeah.
And so Southside with You, it's just set on the day of that date. It starts with the beginning of the date, it ends when they get home, and it doesn't go outside of that. It also really doesn't ever wink to like the fact that these will become the two most powerful people.
Yeah, like it doesn't end with like Michelle going like, no way are you ever going to be President Barack.
No,
like, no, I'm telling you, I'm going to do it one day.
It doesn't. This is a movie that is so good at just through observation and character work giving you its themes. Like, because it is about that these are two people who will become incredibly powerful.
Right.
This is, you can't ignore that they're telling a story about Barack and Michelle Obama.
Yeah, because that's the reason why they're telling a story about Barack. Like, this movie would not have been made if Barack Obama never became president. And
I will say it totally works just on the level of a movie that's just a nice kind of relaxed film about two people going on a first date. It's kind of like a Richard Linklater movie, like Before Sunrise or something like that. Very good on that same level. But I also think it thematizes these characters in such an interesting way, where part of the movie's argument is how important these two are to each other. They're obviously still alive and in power. To fulfilling their goals, and that you don't get Barack Obama without Michelle Obama, and these kinds of things, and the kind of dynamics between them are so interesting. And my favorite scene in the movie is part of the date is the pretext for it, because Barack's totally a player in this film, and Michelle doesn't want to go on a date with him. So his pretense is they're going to go to a community organizing event.
Okay.
And it turns out it's where, if you know his history, he was a community organizer in Chicago for a number of years. He's back in Chicago from Boston, where he's at Harvard Law for the summer, and he's helping his old community again. And so they go to this community organizing event, and he winds up giving a speech, and they very succinctly and clearly, without winking, underline Barack Obama's, I think, underlying like philosophy as a person and as a politician, and the thing that I think people who like Barack Obama find inspiring about the guy, which is he really does have this clear message about hope and about empathy and about the need for community, and that this is how government works and all these things. And the ideals, and I think this is something else the movie points to, is that his ideals are so kind of high and not utopian, but so, I don't even know how to say it, but they're sort of so complex and such a big wish for society that you can also tell the ways in which he, as president, has in some ways succeeded on those ideals and not been able to match them because they're so difficult to enact.
Yeah.
And I think it's another interesting thing to compare of, this is Barack Obama in 1989, who is he now, and where have those ideals gone? It's interesting. But I just love that scene. The two actors who play the characters, the woman is named Tika Sumpter, and the guy is Parker Sawyers. And they're fantastic. These are not typical biopic performances. They're not in makeup. They're not doing imitations of the real people. They're just playing characters. And they definitely evoke the real people. Like Tika Sumpter in particular, you really do get Michelle Obama from her, even though I can't point to anything she's doing that's like imitating Michelle Obama.
Right.
And the same with Parker Sawyers. The only time he does any real imitation is in the speech, where he does some of the mannerisms we know Obama does a lot of. Yeah. But other than that, he's just playing a character, and I think you can evoke a person so much more when you do that than when you're doing
than like getting into the makeup chair and like having all that done and like doing the accent and everything.
That just feels like an SNL skit.
Yeah.
I think the best comparison is when George W. Bush, his last year of the presidency, there was a movie that came out about him, and that was Oliver Stone's W.
Right.
And that is a horrible movie.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Awful. And I don't like Oliver Stone to begin with. But just a bad movie. It's not particularly interesting in its view on Bush in any way. And it's the SNL version, where everyone is in super heavy makeup. You've got, characters playing like way aged up, or in some cases aged down, and they're doing the voices. Josh Brolin is pretty good because he kind of naturally sounds like George Bush, because they're both from Texas and they have kind of generic Texas accents. But I would love to see the version of that movie where he doesn't have to simultaneously do the makeup and the impression, where he could just be Josh Brolin doing a performance.
Yeah.
But that movie, because that movie also tries to be about the entire Bush presidency, and of course there's no historical perspective on that, because it came out in 2008.
Yeah.
One of the most important things of the Bush legacy, the bailout, hadn't even happened. I don't think you can make the Bush movie without that. Yeah. But this, because it's, Obama is still president, it's not a movie about his presidency. It is implicitly in some ways about that, but it's about this sort of historical date that he and Michelle went on. And so it's like, to me, it's like the qualitative inverse of that W movie, because it's such a smart way to examine this person in a way where we can have historical perspective on this. We're like, what parts of their personalities did they have when they were young that we recognize now? That's the question of the movie.
Right.
But it's very good. It's a joy to watch. It's very interesting. It has so many interesting things to say about race and power and relationships between people. And there's so much of it is like just the history sounds like fiction, like, that Barack and Michelle's first date was they went to an art museum and saw an exhibit of black artists. Then they went to Barack's community organizing event. Then they went to see Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
Oh,
and it's like, that's such a rich thing to make a movie out of. Like those three things. And they really do. And there's this build to it. And there's a hilarious moment at the end where they meet Michelle's boss after the movie, and he's a white dude. And he's like all perplexed by the end of Do the Right Thing. Like, why would Mookie throw the trash can? Why would he destroy that property? And Barack gives the typical explanation you give to white people about that movie, which is Mookie's trying to save Sal.
Yeah.
And then he turns to Michelle where he's like, I'm just kidding. Mookie was fucking mad. And it's like, that's so awesome. I love that moment. And I can totally also imagine Barack Obama doing that.
Yeah.
So, just this very smart movie, very culturally relevant, and just a good movie. So I would totally see it, Obviously, if you hate Barack Obama with a passion, I don't know what to do for you. But that's the thing. So, good movie. And,
cool.
It's not a political movie. Like, I think people think like, oh, it's propaganda. They made the Barack Obama movie. It's not. It's really not. Yeah. This was not made by Oliver Stone. You don't need to worry. Yeah.
Or was it?
No, it's a good movie. So
okay,
all right. Anyway, we can talk about that some other time. Yes,
Oliver Stone cast.
God. Anyway, next we can talk about the movie that I saw this weekend, which was Hell or High Water. This is kind of the indie hit at the moment. It premiered at Cannes this year. It stars Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Jeff Bridges.
Okay, that's a cast.
Yeah, it's a good cast. I don't remember the name of the director. I think it's something McKenzie. I don't think he's a first-time director. No, he's not at all, because I've seen some of his other movies, but this is probably his most famous movie now in America, like most prominent to be released in the United States, because I think he might be a British director or has directed in England before. But phenomenal. This is the best I'm going to talk about on this list. It's sort of a modern Western crime movie where Chris Pine and Ben Foster play brothers. They are robbing banks in kind of a very clever way that I won't spoil. Jeff Bridges is the marshal who is on their hunt. He is going to be retiring soon. It definitely has shades of No Country for Old Men. People have been comparing it, and I would say those shades are in the Jeff Bridges character, who definitely has some similarities to kind of the aura of the Tommy Lee Jones character there, where it's someone reaching the end of their career and being confronted with something that they don't understand.
Right.
But it is a absolutely phenomenal movie. The cinematography in this thing is just to die for. It is incredible. The acting is fantastic. You would expect Jeff Bridges to be good. You expect Ben Foster to be good. Great character actor there. Chris Pine, who I really like in those Star Trek movies,
he's
I think he's great. I did not know he had this in him, though. This is a performance that is built on sort of silence and little moments and dark introspection, and he is just stupendous. And I feel like it's going to be a career-transforming performance for him. Because obviously he can't do Star Trek forever, but I feel like, okay, this guy's going to turn into an actor we watch for reasons other than blockbuster movies. And if anything, I feel like maybe Hollywood hasn't known how to use him yet because they use him as kind of the pretty boy leading man. Mm-hmm. And this is like his moment that Ryan Gosling, who I'm going to talk in a minute about, has had recently, or Leonardo DiCaprio has had many times, where they start in one mode and then they do a drama and they're so good in something gritty that it's like they're never going to go back. You know, I really do feel like this is his moment. But the movie is so finger on the pulse in terms of how it talks about economics and people in but sort of the struggle of white people in areas where opportunity has kind of disappeared for themselves and their children. And it's a very relevant discussion with the rise of Donald Trump, actually. And they could not have known that when they made this movie, obviously, but that they could read the atmosphere and say, someone could exploit this, obviously, and this movie's about some of those issues. It's just fantastic. You see this sometimes where people will make a crime thriller or something to kind of couch a political discussion, and I can feel like one suffers at the hand of the other. But this is just so naturalistic in how it's done. It feels very organic the whole way through, and I couldn't recommend this movie highly enough. And this is one you should definitely see in a theater if you can, because it looks gorgeous. And I was not even seeing this on a particularly good screen. It was at a shitty Regal theater, and didn't. If it looked like a Blu-ray just blown up on the screen, but it's a good-looking movie, so
cool.
It's good.
Yeah, I always like it when you have actors like Chris Pine or like Daniel Radcliffe is the one I'm thinking of like very recently that like have that like leading man thing that they did, that they're like very much that kind of not like it's not necessarily a bland character, but it's such a sort of like stereotypical role to play that there's not a lot of like meat in it, and then they do like transition from that to being like, fuck it, I'm just going to do this like indie movie with like this like really meaty kind of performance and just like dive into that. And I always like to see actors be able to sort of like really really sort of test their muscles and stuff that way.
Absolutely, because that's how you make a career. You can't be Leonardo DiCaprio from Titanic for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can be Leonardo DiCaprio from The Revenant as long as you're willing to destroy your own body.
Yeah.
For your art. Yes. Or Daniel Radcliffe from the Farting Corpse movie as long as you're willing to have a scraggly beard and just be weird on screen.
Yeah, and just, not like kind of take the piss out of yourself a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So great movie. It's like 100 minutes.
Okay,
it's not too long.
That is a totally reasonable running time.
Good stuff. These kind of movies can run too long, and I think even this one, it's another movie I would end probably 5 minutes before it does. And not like the ending's bad. It's just like, there's the evocative shot that is the end of the movie to me. Yeah. But I understand I maybe think differently than other people. Like
80 to 100 minute running time is such like just such a nice period of time for a movie to be, right?
It is, especially these days. This last movie's a little longer, but justifiably so. And this is, it's only 2 hours. But this is The Nice Guys. And this is not currently in theaters. It came out in May, and I missed it because I wasn't really seeing a lot of movies that month. But this is the new film from Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon and a lot of movies in the 90s, directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is one of the biggest cult classics of this millennium so far. That's a lot. I just mean since 2000. Revitalized Robert Downey Jr.'s career, and most recently directed Iron Man 3.
Is that the last thing that he directed?
Yeah, Iron Man 3. Mm-hmm. Which was only like that was 2013, I think, so not that long ago.
For some reason, Iron Man 3 feels like it was a lifetime ago to me.
It does, because it was the first post-Avengers movie.
Right, yeah.
And they've done so much since then, because pre-Avengers, remember, they'd only done 1 year where they did 2 movies. Otherwise, it was like it was like really slow for a while. But yeah, so this is his first movie post-Iron Man 3. I love Shane Black to death. His stuff is great. And I love him as a director especially. And oh my god, if you have not seen The Nice Guys, fucking hell. This was probably not as quote-unquote good a movie as something like Hell or High Water, but it's like my favorite on this list because it's so absurdly fun. And if you haven't seen the premise, it's Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, and they are one of them is a private investigator, and then Russell Crowe he's just a guy who beats people up for money.
Right.
Which I think Russell Crowe does in his off time. Like, it's
he may very well.
Yeah. Like
he could. He totally could.
He pulls out the iron knuckles at the beginning of the movie, and I'm thinking, this is just what Russell Crowe does when he's not acting. He just goes and beats
they
people.
never even told him that they were making a movie.
No. They just said, go beat up Ryan Gosling, and he's like, I'll beat up that pretty boy.
Yeah.
It's great. But no, so they're a private eye and a guy who beats people up, and they get wrapped into in Shane Black ways, a very convoluted mystery that has many twists and turns and never fully makes sense, but in a very self-aware mode.
Is it set during Christmas?
Only the end of the movie. That's the one surprising thing. It's
well,
not.
Hey, most movies aren't set during Christmas at any point in their running time.
Yes.
So, he needs to sneak it in there a little bit.
Yeah,
apparently.
He gets a little Christmas in there. And I should say, while all the advertising is showing this as a two-hander with those two actors, it's really a three-hander with those two and then Ryan Gosling's character's daughter, who's played by an unknown actress.
Are you sure it's not his little sister?
No, it's definitely his daughter.
Okay.
That's a point in the movie, because his wife has died and all this. And she is sort of their unofficial third partner. And Shane Black, if you've seen his other movies, especially I actually think Iron Man 3, he has a gift for writing kids.
Yeah, that's some of the best stuff in Iron Man 3 is when Tony Stark lands at the kid's house and all that stuff.
Yep. And he writes kids that are technically precocious. They act like adults and stuff, but they don't come across as precocious. They just come across as kids who have this personality.
Yeah.
And he's just so good at it. Like, I almost want to see him make a Harry Potter movie or something. Like, some kind of franchise that has kids now. Like, what could he do with that? But that kid, I don't remember the girl's name. She's kind of an unknown actress. But, she's 13 in the movie. And just the way she plays opposite these two great actors, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, especially Russell Crowe. They have some great moments. It's just awesome and hilarious, and just those three characters make the movie. And this movie is so dense with jokes and just absurd comedy. I think it's the most kind of screwball thing Shane Black has written. Like, because if you've seen his other movies, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang being probably his most famous definitely his most famous as a director. Yeah. That's a great movie that is definitely comedic, but I also think has a fairly serious core in parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a comedy.
Yeah, and Lethal Weapon, very funny, but it's also, Murtaugh's trying to kill himself and stuff. Yeah. So there's things like that. But this is just straight up, there is some stuff that could be portrayed as serious, but the whole thing is done sort of screwball, and it is so absurdly funny. I loved every single minute of this movie. Ryan Gosling, honestly, I think this is the best thing he's ever done as an actor. And like, maybe not the best movie, but his best performance. And I love Ryan Gosling. He's another one of those actors who started out kind of in things like The Notebook, and I just didn't think anything of him. And then he starts doing more crazy shit like Drive, and you're like, shit, this dude's a really good actor.
Yeah.
And in this, he has some physical comedy in this movie that is like worthy of Charlie Chaplin. Like, it's just amazing the way he throws his body around and does crazy things. He's playing drunk most of the movie. But he also like manages to build a character so finely and with such detail. I love all of that. Russell Crowe is just awesome. This is one of those things where I don't think Hollywood always knows how to use Russell Crowe, but when they do, I just love the guy.
Yeah.
He's so cool. And again, I just imagine he does this stuff in real life. So when he's breaking Ryan Gosling's arm, I'm like, they didn't even have to tell him to do that. He's just doing it.
Yeah.
So it's great. Like I said, very wonderfully convoluted mystery they have to solve. It's L.A. in the 70s, and it definitely belongs to this great tradition of L.A. conspiracy mysteries, which is like this subgenre of literature and movies and stuff I just love.
Yeah.
Like Inherent Vice a couple years ago, which is still my favorite movie of this new decade, I think. It kind of belongs in that same tradition where it's got... And that movie's a little more serious, but it's also very funny. So... This is one of those movies that I think is going to become a classic, a la Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Neither of them did well in theaters. I think they're going to have a long shelf life. And I hope Shane Black has enough capital from Iron Man 3 that he can keep making movies even if they flop.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah, no, like Nice Guys is something that, like, when I always saw the trailers and stuff in theaters, it was always something where it's like, I know I'm going to watch this movie one day, but, like, it's just one of those movies that, like, you just don't go to a theater for whatever reason.
And I get that, like, and it would look gorgeous on a theater, beautiful cinematography and stuff, but I also, like, 30 minutes in, I realized one of the things I loved about it is it feels like a movie I would discover on VHS in the 90s at, like, a Blockbuster or something.
Yeah, it just feels like a movie that, like, you know is really good, you know you want to watch, but it's like, you just need to have that moment where you watch it.
Yeah.
And, like, you can't go to the theater to have that moment. Like, the moment happens to you.
And because Shane Black so much shaped the cinema of the 90s as a screenwriter with stuff like Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout, he's like the last person making movies like that.
Yeah.
So it's very unique. If you've never seen one of his movies before, yeah, I think you'd love this. Just know that it's very silly and fun going in.
Yeah.
And oh my god, there's an art to comedic violence that this movie gets that is so hard to do, but it's almost like Grand Theft Auto-esque in some moments where it's like they get how to make a body falling off a building and just splattering into nothing hilarious.
Yeah, instead of just like disturbing.
Yes.
It's got that Hitman quality.
Yes, it's great. So can't recommend all of those enough. Nice Guys especially. I just got it on iTunes. I think it's on Blu-ray now. But fantastic.
Cool. Good movies coming out.
Good movies. And honestly, and there's a bunch still in theaters that I haven't seen that I wanted to see. Like the other two I need to go see is I want to see Pete's Dragon, which is the Disney movie that sounded like a bad idea, but turns out it's really good, which basically... That's every Disney movie this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's a bunch of movies that looked bad, and then it turns out, they're actually really good.
Uh-huh.
There's that, and then Kubo and the Two Strings.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see that too.
And what's the common through line of most of the movies I'm talking about?
Nobody's fucking seen any of these movies other than that Don't Breathe one.
Yeah, it's like... It's a weird thing this summer where a lot of the best movies haven't done well, and it's sad. Like that Ghostbusters movie, I'm devastated by its box office because they're probably not going to make any more of those, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And just things like that. And then, Suicide Squad makes that's $1 billion fucking dollars.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what like the fallout of this year for movies is going to be in terms of like what the studios are going to take, like what lessons they're going to try to learn from what movies succeeded and how like most movies just didn't do what they needed them to do.
I think if I were to tell them any one lesson, and I guess we're at the end of the summer, so it's worth having this discussion.
Yeah,
marketing. What's the
right.
If I look at the key line with the movies that did well, whether they were good or bad, like I hate Suicide Squad. That was a well-marketed movie and an aggressively marketed movie.
Yeah, and like a movie that marketed itself like dynamically, like
yes.
it responded in its marketing to audience trends over months. Like it just like reacted so quickly to what it felt like audiences were starting to look for.
And then if you look at, the Disney movies that did well, which is most of theirs this year, like Zootopia and Jungle Book and Civil War.
And The Huntsman 2.
That wasn't a Disney movie.
Oh.
They don't.
Right. Yeah. I think the Snow White connection always makes me think of Disney.
Snow White's technically public domain, so anyone can do that.
Yeah, except like anyone can do that, but you know that like Disney's going to send like Mickey to your house.
Yes.
It's like, I heard you've been making a Snow White movie, and I didn't see a check in my mail. Did something go wrong? Oh!
I want a movie where Russell Crowe is a hitman for Disney and he wears a Mickey Mouse costume. I'd watch the shit out of that.
Just imagine like Mickey showing up to Chris Hemsworth as like, these fucking Huntsman movies, you work for us, bitch! You're Thor!
But the common thread with all the Disney movies, and I think it's true also of the ones yet to come out, like Rogue One, is that they've done very little marketing, actually. They just do the right kinds of trailers and TV spots. They don't overdo it, but they give you really impressive bits of the movie. And why Disney can do that is they're making really good movies.
Yeah.
And obviously you can't do that with something like Suicide Squad because it's a pile of shit and you have to market it some way else. But, so all that's been marketed well. That's why those movies did well, I think. Finding Dory, to me, had, and I don't watch like kids' channels, but in like mainstream stuff, had very little marketing, but did huge. And it's still doing huge. It's like still in the top 10, I think. And it's been out for like 3 months. It's crazy. But then you look at the movies that flopped, like Star Trek Beyond. That didn't quite flop, but it kind of flopped.
Yeah, but that's like the story of a lot of movies this summer. It's like it didn't quite flop, but it just didn't do what the studio wanted it to do. Like
Star Trek Beyond, Jason Bourne, Ghostbusters, a lot of these. Really, the common thread was the marketing was nothing. Like I had no idea what to make of any of those movies before they came out. Like the Ghostbusters ads were just kind of bland. I didn't think they were bad, but they were very bland.
Yeah.
The Jason Bourne ads were just generic shaky cam action.
Yeah.
And the Star Trek Beyond ads were confusing.
Yeah, very confusing.
So it's like, and so I do think that translates because I don't really, a lot of people are saying like this was a bad summer for movies. I don't think that. I think there was plenty of good stuff and I think a pretty normal amount of bad stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of the good stuff didn't do well. And some of the bad stuff did poorly, but some of the bad stuff did well because, and so that gets heightened. Like when something as shitty as Suicide Squad makes that much money, and it's still going to come up short, just so you know, because it fell off a cliff after first weekend.
Yeah, it was
but,
like the WB syndrome.
But like when that stuff, does poorly, it also elevates it. It makes everyone have this conception that everything that was bad did well, when that's not the case.
Yeah.
But I really do wonder, with WB doing so tepidly with their superhero movies, where Suicide Squad looked like a hit, it's not even going to clear, I think, like $700 million worldwide, which for the amount they put into that, again, they need more if they're going to build this thing.
Yeah, and then also with the audience response being generally tepid, you're not getting a lot of the asses in the seats for the sequel kind of thing.
Because the one WB movie this year that I can see being just an unmitigated hit is the Fantastic Beasts movie.
Right,
the Harry Potter one, because they've marketed that one really well. Like, honestly, they haven't done the over-marketing thing yet. The ads have been really good. Even someone who's not a Harry Potter fan like you have been able to look at it and say objectively that kind of looks cool.
Yeah, even if you're not a fan of Harry Potter, you have to admit, those last few movies were really well made.
Yeah,
and,
so
the people making another one of those movies, okay.
So I hope WB learns the right lessons from that, which is that they were onto something with Harry Potter and they lost it when they got on the DC train.
Yeah,
and it's not that it's the Harry Potter stories; it's that they put actual filmmaking talent and craft into those films.
Yeah. Again, regardless of your affection for the source material, those last two movies were really well made.
Oh, and this is actually a discussion I want to have maybe closer to when that movie comes out. But the critic Matt Zoller cites, he runs the Roger Ebert site, does a bunch of other stuff. On Twitter, he was, I wonder if he was seeing them for the first time or something, but he was rewatching them and he said, man, I'm noticing these Harry Potter movies get really good starting at film 3. What do people think? And most of his replies were fans of the books being like, they cut my favorite scene, I hate them. But I started tweeting about it because I was thinking about that. I'm like, you know what? When I think about it, regardless of what you think of Harry Potter, those movies were made at a level that is so far above and beyond what most Hollywood live action stuff is today, like in terms of craft, in terms of acting, in terms of production design and music. Like, they were spectacles that were made with such artistic passion. And even the Hollywood movies I love these days, like the Marvel stuff, they're more akin to TV productions with big budgets. You know, they're not hugely, other than stuff like I think Guardians of the Galaxy was, maybe the first Avengers to me, but oftentimes cinematically, they're not the most interesting if you're just looking at cinematography and stuff.
Yeah, like they don't have that kind of like unique, striking aesthetic that David Yates got, especially on his movies and Alfonso Cuarón and how. Well,
I was just listing like there were 7 cinematographers over those 8 movies. Every single one is a heavy hitter, like a legend in some circle of world filmmaking or Hollywood. And it's like that alone is something that's like you don't see that much anymore.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I don't think it was Harry Potter did not make the money it did over the years it did because they were coasting.
Right.
You know, I do think those movies, because we've seen this with like Hunger Games and stuff. When you start to coast, people stop going to the movies.
Yeah, exactly.
And Harry Potter did it over a decade and 8 movies, and that was not a coincidence. And I wonder if that's the kind of model that and like the Chris Nolan Batmans, the movies that made money through the 2000s, Lord of the Rings, the Jason Bourne movies, oftentimes were made with this level of craft that I think we're going back on, and I think we need to go back to.
Yeah.
So, and that's not even a money thing. You can have the craft without spending $1 bajillion. Just ask Michael Bay. But anyway, so let's go ahead and move on. That's just our little summer movie discussion, I guess.
Yeah.
But beta time.
Oh boy.
Let's talk about some game betas.
Yeah!
We can go through these first 2 pretty fast.
Yeah.
The first game was Nioh, which had its alpha demo a few months ago.
Yeah, that was like late spring. I talked about it then.
Yeah, recap your thoughts on the alpha demo.
Yeah, so like basically I thought it's a sort of Dark Souls-y samurai game that I made by Ninja Team from Tecmo. And like I like that alpha a lot. Like obviously it was rough around a lot of edges. I think they smoothed off a lot of those rough edges up for this beta. But I thought it was just a game that had a really interesting sort of style to it, a great world, really fun, fast-paced combat, and like really promising that like if they like fixed a lot of that stuff up, and I really enjoyed the alpha a lot.
Yeah, well now we have the beta.
Yes.
And is it still out?
It might be. Like I think it might be finishing up around now. It's been available for a long time. For sure.
But I finally got to play it with this beta demo. I liked it. It's not necessarily my kind of game in the Dark Souls-y aspect of it.
Right.
But I loved the atmosphere. The samurai stuff is cool. You just feel cool playing it.
Yeah.
Got good graphics and visuals. It's the kind of game where I played a little of it and I thought, if I throw myself into this, I'm not too interested in doing that on the beta level. I'd rather wait for the full game. But this is enough to let me know this is interesting.
Yeah, and the thing for me that's sort of like I really enjoyed this beta a lot because they gave you basically the first level that was also in the alpha, and then the second so they gave you in both the alpha and the beta they gave you 2 levels, but they're the second level in each of them were different. So like in this time you get like this cave level that ends with you fighting this like creepy vampire lady. And I think the thing I liked the most about the beta in some ways is that they basically comprehensively looked at every single major criticism that people like me and others that played the alpha had about the mechanics in the alpha, and they addressed like basically every single one. Like there's like basic stuff like the frame rate smoothed out and like the graphics look a little bit better and stuff like that, but you know, they added in at least a basic tutorial, which the alpha had no tutorial, and this game's combat system is so unique to it that like the story of the alpha, I think for most people, like for me, was like you spend like 3 hours and then you finally kind of understand how the combat works, and at least here they like tell you what all the fucking buttons do.
I had no idea because the tutorial was like I actually thought pretty cool in this. So
no, the alpha. I mean, obviously everyone assumed that they were going to have a tutorial in the full game, but the alpha just started you on the beach on that first level, and you're like,
shit, that'd be tough.
What the fuck do I? You just run up to that first guy, and you're like, especially because the alpha came out like literally. I think I started playing it the night after I finished Dark Souls 3, and so it was like going from Dark Souls 3 to Nioh, it's like they're so similar on like a face-like sort of aesthetic and structural level, but the nuances of the combat are so completely different that I just kept on getting killed over and over before I realized like, oh, blocking has way less of a penalty in Nioh than it did in Dark Souls. Like you can block and it's fine and stuff like that. But then also the alpha had this really sort of intense weapon durability thing where your weapons were breaking all the time and you're constantly switching weapons. That was kind of interesting once you figured out how to sort of play with it. But then ultimately they just sort of scrapped that system and replaced it with this weapon familiarity system that just sort of rewards you for using the same weapon for a certain period of time, where you become more powerful with it and unlock more skill points to use for katanas and stuff like that. And so that system's better. They added in a whole other sort of like thing that you can swap in for your quick use items, because before it was just 4, but then it was really just 3 because one of them was always going to be your medicine. And if you're someone who's using a bunch of the magic abilities and stuff like that, which I haven't played much with, only having 3 quick use slots was completely untenable, so they added in a whole other one of those. And there's just like a bunch of examples like that of they evened out the difficulty curve at the beginning with like some of those enemies do not take quite as much to kill in that first area that they did the first time around. And just like all across the board, they just sort of like listened to the feedback, smoothed out a lot of the criticism, and sort of like readdressed some criticism or some systems that didn't really work. And it's just a much smoother game. And if they can like add that level of improvement, even from the beta onto the full game, like I think this game's going to be really cool.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's going to be a really cool game. I kind of doubt it's going to be for me because I'm just not really into these kind of third-person combat games. I don't know what you would call the Dark Souls genre.
Yeah, it feels like it's something that we're going to have to come up with a genre term for at some point, because there's enough games sort of trying to hit the same thing that Dark Souls hit.
But I respect the hell out of them. Like, I think Bloodborne looks super cool. I love the look and feel of Dark Souls. I love the look and feel of this. So if it's your kind of thing, this is something to be excited for. Have they said when the actual like full game is coming out?
They still have like a tentative release date of 2016, but I feel like that's probably going to get pushed back. Like
it has to.
Yeah, like there's not a lot of time left to announce a date. And I think this would be a much better game for like February or March or something in 2017.
That's always been kind of the Dark Souls window.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's and it's the game where when you kill an enemy with your katana and your katana's covered in blood and you sheath it, he flicks the sword or the blood off the sword and then like sheathes it in a really cool way. And it's like and every time you do that, it feels awesome. Like I do that basically after every single time I kill an enemy, and it feels good every single time. So.
Just on a basic level, you want a samurai power fantasy, this is the game to get.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, that beta is really cool.
You played a little of Battlefield 1.
Yeah, so if you were still thinking that maybe Battlefield 1 would have some sort of interesting perspective on World War 1 and would like have the World War 1 setting really inform something about the game that made it feel not like just another reskin of Battlefield 4 the way Battlefield Hardline was, you'd be wrong, because they somehow managed to find a way to take World War 1 and still have basically every single class start with an automatic weapon, which is pretty fucking ridiculous.
How does that work?
You really sort of bend the rules and say like, well, this sort of like prototype submachine gun was technically in use for like the last 3 months of the war, so here you go. And yeah, like I only managed to play a couple of rounds of the Battlefield 1 beta. The servers were pretty bad for like most of the time, which is fine. Like that's what betas are for. Like it's good that they're doing that. So hopefully they have a smoother launch. I've never been a very big Battlefield guy in general. I don't like the big, massive maps and stuff like that. I tend to like my multiplayer more like 4v4, like Team Slayer, Halo stuff, or like Call of Duty 5v5 deathmatch. Like that's more the scale of multiplayer I tend to prefer. And so the big, huge, giant maps stuff doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's like the graphics are great, the sound design is great. DICE always does a really good job on all their sort of like production side stuff. But personally, with me, like I'm not super invested into that kind of first-person shooter multiplayer, and then I still just think there's something distasteful about the way they're using the setting. Like it
sounds like it's just a skin on Battlefield.
It's like the setting it's just an aesthetic thing. Like it looks really good and it sounds really good. Like I'm sure they probably like got like replicas or actual like models of all these guns and fired them on, then like got all the different sounds of like, oh, this is what it sounds like firing in a cave and in a desert with like sand and all that stuff. Like all that stuff is still, their like sound design stuff is like the best in the industry. It was for like Battlefront, it was for Battlefield 4, but other than the production stuff, like I really wish that they had found a way to make if they're going to use World War I, to make the World War I stuff feel more meaningful. But it's still like, it feels like it plays like any other Battlefield game. It plays like a modern first-person shooter. You don't have to deal with the issues that people fighting in World War I would have had to deal with the weapons that were like widely available at the time to the majority of infantry, and not like the prototype submachine gun kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm sure people who like Battlefield will like this game because this is another Battlefield game, but it's not, if you're someone who's never gotten into that franchise, like, I don't think it's going to do anything for you.
Yeah. All right, so there's that, and then the big one,
Yes.
Titanfall 2.
Alpha Network Technical Test, whatever the
Yes.
fuck, weird bespoke name they had for this one.
The alpha for a game coming out in a month and a half.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It felt like every other place you looked at, called it something different. It was like, it was either the Titanfall 2 multiplayer alpha, the Titanfall 2 technical test, the Titanfall 2 network beta. It's like, what is this?
We're going to call it the beta for now.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
Yeah. That's what it is for all intents and purposes. This is
We
a
were
marketing
going to
beta.
talk about it on this podcast regardless, but I think we were both worried it would be a little out of date. But then they wound up having a second round, and it's
Yeah.
been in the news. So I think it's still timely to talk about.
Yeah.
And it had 2 rounds over 2 weekends.
Yeah.
We both played both, I assume?
Yes, yeah. I only played a couple of rounds of the second one because
Yeah.
they changed a little bit, but they didn't change
No.
enough to sort of change my opinion on it. And
Yeah.
I want to play more.
So let's talk about our history with Titanfall first.
Okay. Yeah.
I played the first game extensively. When I actually started playing it, I didn't have an Xbox One yet, so I played this on the 360 for a while and loved it. And I think that and that was actually of all the games that kind of straddled the 2 gens, Titanfall had one of the best old gen ports, where the 360 version was actually totally rock solid. I think it had a 30 frames per second cap, but other than that, it was totally fine. And I played it there, and then when I got my Xbox One, I played it a bunch. And I love Titanfall. I thought Titanfall 1, honestly, my favorite multiplayer shooter experience in years. And I don't play a ton of multiplayer shooters these days, and I've liked some of the modern ones, like Doom I thought had pretty good first-person shooter multiplayer. But for the most part, not what I get into. Even something like Overwatch, which I really like, I still liked, and they're very different, but I'm just saying, as first-person shooters go, Titanfall is my favorite of the last few years. I think that game had a sense of scale that was so invigorating. The Titan system itself was so fun because the game just kind of let itself be goofy, and rounds would be fast, they would be full of activity, they were never boring, and they would have just so much going on because you would have Titans dropping, and then you would have the pilots on the ground, and you would have the AI, and the maps looked big but were actually pretty compact, and so they were very strategically laid out. It was just very, very good stuff. So I come into Titanfall 2 with fairly high hopes. We'll leave it there for a second.
Right.
Where did you come into Titanfall 2 from?
So when I played the first beta weekend, I had never played any Titanfall 1 at all because I didn't have an Xbox One when that came out, and so the only person when that came out, the only person I knew who had an Xbox One was basically you. and you got one even after it came out. Mm-hmm. So I had seen you play a couple of rounds of Titanfall, but never really did it myself. It always seemed interesting. I just never had that opportunity to play it. And so then I played the Titanfall 2, the weekend beta thing, and then we'll get our thoughts on that later. But I was so sort of curious and intrigued by some of the decisions they made in the Titanfall 2 beta that I was like, well, Titanfall 1's an old game, and I can play it for $5 and just play a couple of rounds and just sort of just satisfy my curiosity. So then after playing the Titanfall 2 first weekend, I got Titanfall 1, and I haven't played a huge amount. I've played maybe a dozen rounds or something. The multiplayer population on that is not very high anymore, but I played enough of it to sort of get a sense of I like it. I think it's well made for what it is. I think it's a game that there's a lot of specific, clear areas in which a sequel could improve upon things and needs to improve upon things for it to be more my thing. I think I have a couple of criticisms of Titanfall that's more than just everyone has there's not enough unlocks and customization and stuff. They should have had more of that kind of stuff. That's a very common criticism. But I also think personally, the matches are a bit too chaotic. There's so much going on with all the Titans coming down all the time and all the enemy AI characters running around and all that stuff. And the attrition mode, which is basically kind of the only mode you can really play with a reasonable multiplayer population anymore.
Which is too bad because there were a bunch of good modes.
I haven't even really had an opportunity to try any of the other modes, but that mode sort of does so much to sort of clutter the match that it makes it hard to actually get a good sense of am I doing well? Is my team doing well? What else do I need to be doing? There's a competitive element to Titanfall that I think a lot of the design choices they made obfuscates the competitiveness of it, which is fine. But for me personally, I like I said, I like that more intimate Halo, Call of Duty kind of multiplayer that has that kind of tactical level that you can really approach and doesn't have the clutter of Titanfall.
No, and I get it. But, I love Titanfall because it was like just this, you would jump into a 10-minute adrenaline shot to your fucking artery.
Yeah, it's completely nuts, but like it's just something where it felt like it's fun, but like it's not something I would stick around for. And I think that's like why people did not stick around for Titanfall.
Totally. And I will say at the height, they had other modes, including one they introduced late in the game that was like a player versus enemy kind of thing where you would be on a team was fantastic. And if you ever get a chance to play that, and I don't know if there's enough people online, that was the best part of that game when it came out. But so Titanfall had its ups and downs, and yes, very famously had a multiplayer fall off in population.
Yeah.
But so that's our opinions on 1. I'm going to give you my opinion on Titanfall 2.
Okay.
Honking pile of horse shit.
Okay.
I hated my time with Titanfall 2. Like, with the first match, I thought I must be doing something wrong. I'm not getting it, whatever, and I kind of tweeted, this doesn't feel right, but it's okay so far. And then, like, every match I played after that, I was like, oh my god, this is just a horrible game. Let me say that the few things I did like about it. Beautiful graphics. It's one of the one things Titanfall 1 had a problem with. It kept at 60 frames per second, but it had a ton of tearing.
Yeah.
The textures basically look like Xbox 360, which isn't a problem. It's just for next gen.
Yeah, no, like it was an early game for that generation. It was like a year after the consoles came out.
So those were issues. And so the graphics, much nicer in Titanfall 2. I think it's a really beautiful game. And it's still on a network level. It just moves you through matches. It's very fast. It gets you in games. It's a very efficient. And I like that. Titanfall 1 had that. Titanfall 2 has that. Those are the other things I liked. It doesn't... To someone who's played a lot of Titanfall, it did not feel like the same game at all to me. And I've never had that experience where I've gone from one game to its sequel and I didn't recognize it.
Right.
Especially with a game that I knew intimately. It felt like a game made for people who didn't play Titanfall 1.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't know why you make the game. Just make something else and call it something else. Like... the matches are slow, they're long, nothing happens, they're super confusing. You talked about attrition being a little confusing. I played the bounty one.
We'll talk about Bounty Hunt.
What the fuck is going on? And like the amped hard whatever, I didn't get that at all.
We will also talk about amped hardpoint.
I didn't get that at all. And hardpoint I loved in Titanfall 1. It's great, and they fucked that up. The Titans are barely there. When they do come in, you can just kill them immediately and you can just ignore them. There's no reason for Titans to exist in the game. So basically what you have is a really super shitty Call of Duty multiplayer where you can run around and you have one cool thing, which is a grappling hook, which doesn't even work in that many scenarios because for some reason, even though they've kept the movement stuff from Titanfall 1 and enhanced it in some ways, they've made these big empty maps where you have no place to use the stuff.
Yeah.
What the fuck did I play?
Yeah, so that's basically that's very similar to my feelings of the Titanfall 2 beta. But since I had not played any Titanfall 1 the first weekend I had, like mine was not just like this is terrible. I was like mystified by it and so fascinated by it again, like so fascinated by it that I was like, I have to go play Titanfall 1 because I knew that like a lot of Titanfall fans had a really negative reaction to the beta. But I was like, I just need to play it myself. I need to put this in perspective somehow because it is. Like Titanfall, because whatever criticisms you have of Titanfall 1, that is a game that understands what it is and what it wants to be. It's like, it fails in some regards, but it understands itself. It has its identity in place. Titanfall 2 feels like, or at least the beta, who knows, I don't feel like they're going to be able to change too much, but you have to like always have the caveat, we were technically talking about the beta here. But Titanfall 2 doesn't feel like it has any idea what it wants to be. Like the Titans... let's just like go down the list because I basically agree with every single complaint you have. So I just want to get into detail because there's so many baffling details.
Let's talk about the Titans. They're in the title.
Let's start with the Titans, and then I also want to talk about the game modes because fucking I don't know what they're doing with their goddamn game modes. So Titans in Titanfall 1. The Titans worked on mostly a timer. Like you could, if you did things to contribute to the objective and stuff, you could speed up the timer a little bit. But ultimately, it was like every 4 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was for the mode, you would get a Titan. Everyone would get multiple Titans over the course of a match, and the Titans felt like, because of that, they were like intricately and like intimately a part of of the game itself. Like not even just like necessarily the mode. Like the Titans were so integrated fully into the experience because everyone was constantly getting them, no matter how well you did. Titanfall 2, they tweaked it a little bit for the second weekend, but not that much. But I mostly played the first weekend. it had no timer whatsoever. It was basically the Titan was a glorified kill streak, and that's already fucking stupid.
I mean, let's put it in this terms. You could technically go a full match without getting a Titan.
Yeah, especially if you played Amped Hardpoint, it would be fairly easy. It would be especially easy if you were actually playing the objective, because you got way more points for your Titan by killing other players than actually playing the objective. We'll go more into detail with what playing the objective actually means.
I do think I played one Hardpoint match where I did not get a Titan.
I definitely played at least one, maybe more. Like I played one where I took note of the fact that I didn't get a Titan, and I maybe didn't get others. Like Bounty Hunt was long enough, and if you sort of played the mode enough to sort of figure out what you were supposed to do, you could get multiple Titans in Bounty Hunt, but even then, you were getting 2, maybe 3. I don't know if I ever got 3 Titans in one match.
No, I never even got 2, honestly.
Yeah, I've definitely had a couple when I did really well with the objective score, at least, that I could get 2 in Bounty Hunt, because those matches also went on 15 minutes. But so already, it is very rare for you to get a Titan. It's rare to have multiple Titans at the same time. Maybe you and one person on the enemy team also has a Titan, just by the way that points have to be distributed. Because that's one of the other things that's weird about it conceptually, is that on one hand, sure, you want to incentivize players to do well. That's the Call of Duty kill streak thing. I've never loved kill streaks in Call of Duty multiplayer. It's that's never really worked for me. But at least in Call of Duty multiplayer, it's if you get 3 kills without dying, you get a UAV. That's fine. Anyone can do that every once in a while, even if you're really bad at Call of Duty. The bonuses are not that extreme. That's fine. But in Titanfall, it feels like they don't quite realize when they completely strip out the timer, or even or make the timer so slow that it's basically pointless, that within a match there is an economy of points that is happening no matter what game you're playing. If there's a score limit or a time limit, there's only so many points that can be achieved by any single player over the course of the match. And so that means that there is a literal limit on how many Titans you can get, and if you're not having that timer, that limit is actually very, very small because of how many points an individual player needs to get a Titan to come in. Multiple people on your team simply cannot get Titans at the same time by the way that the points are going to be distributed based on how the different people are playing the objective and how many points you can actually get.
So let me explain, in Titanfall 1, if you didn't play it, the great and kind of fun, chaotic thing about that game is that you'd get to a point very quickly into the match where a lot of people were getting Titans.
Yes.
And because it was both a timer and a skill thing, it meant it was never everyone got them at once. But multiple people did.
Yeah, but but everyone would get their first Titan within this window of time.
So you would get to a point very early in the match, a third of the way through, fourth of the way through, where people had Titans, and you're either on the ground trying to fight, or you're in your own Titan going out and doing stuff. And so it was very varied. The matches were a little unpredictable in that way, because you couldn't quite know when shit was going to hit the fan. And you knew, okay, these first couple minutes, that's when I'm on the ground, and I have to do this, this, and this. And then I'm going to get my Titan, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And that was great. With Titanfall 2, the matches, I don't know if they're technically longer. They feel so really much longer.
Bounty Hunt feels like it takes forever.
Yeah. So you'll feel like you're playing 10 minutes on the ground. And again, they're big, empty maps. There's not a lot to kill. The teams aren't big enough to mean you're running into people all the time. So you're just trying to get kills, or you're trying to figure out what the fuck the objective is. More on that in a minute. And eventually someone might get a Titan. And because it's on the other side of the map, you can just ignore it.
Yeah.
Or you could go kill it really easily.
Yeah.
There's that. Or you might eventually get a Titan. No one else has Titans, and they just gang up, and you don't get to use it for more than 10 seconds because it just gets brought down immediately.
Yeah, and there's not that sense of, like you said in Titanfall 1, that everyone's getting their Titans around the same time. It's not, because you can speed it up, it's not all at literally the exact same moment, but early on in the match, if you're in a Titan, that there are other Titans around to deal with, or if you're on the ground, people are starting to get Titans, and there's a sense of flow and pace that would give the match, that even within the chaos, there was that kind of timer always running that you could rely on that would ebb and flow, that how the match was kind of going and where the Titans were going. And in Titanfall 2, it's just every once in a while, it really does just feel like it's a glorified Call of Duty kill streak. It's a little bit more elaborate than your average Call of Duty kill streak. And even then, Call of Duty kill streaks have gotten pretty elaborate over the past couple of games, so it's not that much more extreme than what you can get But then, so that's like how you get the Titan makes no sense because it's just does not feel like it's a big part of the game anymore.
And I should say, with the second round of the beta, when they added a timer, it's like it ups your percentages a little tiny bit. It does not substantively change the flow of the match.
Yeah, because I didn't know that they had added that timer the second weekend until after that weekend, that beta weekend ended, and I was reading some stuff and people said that it was there, and I trust that it was probably there, but I never actually noticed while I was playing it. So that
it does not substantially change anything. About the game.
Yeah. So who knows how much they might change that for the full game? But we're talking about what we were able to play. But then, so past just getting your Titan. Then when you actually get your Titan, though, there's a whole other range of issues that this was the thing that when I went back to play Titanfall 1, I was most just like befuddled by how they fucked this up because Titanfall 1 has it basically perfect. Like, because in Titanfall 2, you have no regenerating shields other than like the most confusing, obtuse fucking mechanic I think I've maybe ever seen in a multiplayer shooter, which is all the battery shit.
I never figured it out.
I still don't really know. I played, I think, quite a substantial more of Titanfall 2 than you did because I wasn't turned off of it right away. But like, so other than like this weird, obscure battery mechanic, which almost nobody engages with, it requires a level of team coordination that you are not going to have in this kind of multiplayer shooter. So you can basically completely ignore the weird battery thing. There's no regenerating shield, no regenerating health for the Titans whatsoever. And the Titans are slow as fuck because they have, like, you had 2 Titan models. So there will be others more in the full game. But again, we can only talk about what was here. One of them had 1 boost that you could unlock an item that would give them 2 boosts. And the boost recharges insanely slowly. And then the other Titan model had no boost and could get 1 boost if you put that other item on and like sacrificed having other different abilities instead to have this 1 boost. So they move incredibly slowly compared to the Titanfall 1 Titans, which had like 2 boosts and like the boost recharged really quickly. And they had like the Titanfall 1 Titans were fun because they moved slow, but they had this ability to just accelerate really quickly and then like erratically with the boost mechanic. And that gave you so many more options in combat, especially against other Titans, to sort of outflank them and dodge their attacks and stuff. In Titanfall 2, that's completely impossible. Like, the boost mechanic is the dash. The dash is slower, it goes shorter, and it recharges much slower. It's, like, might as well not be there, which is why one of the Titan chassis doesn't even have it at all. And then when you have no regenerating shield, and you have no regenerating health, and you are in this giant mech that anyone can see basically from anywhere in this really flat open map, you are just taking damage constantly from everywhere, from the other pilots that you can't even really see, and you can't do anything about it. Where in Titanfall 1, you had a regenerating shield. So if you took a couple of sort of pot shots from a guy on a rooftop across the way, you could duck around a corner, wait a couple of seconds, and get your shield back and be totally fine, which meant that it was totally possible to have a Titan for like the entire match in Titanfall 1 if you were doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, it is bad strategically to get in a Titan in Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
It is a bad strategic move to use the Titans, and I don't know how that sentence can even come about. Because, again, the thing that was so smart in Titanfall 1 is that the Titans basically changed the scale of what you were doing, but other than that, you could still play similarly. You're in a Titan, you're still a combatant. You're not a target. You have moves, you can crouch, you can duck, you can run around, all these things. So it's like, you're not on the ground as a pilot, but you're sort of like a giant pilot now, almost. You know what I mean? And that was a very smart way to do it. It just alters the scale, but it doesn't completely change your abilities and all these things. And Titanfall 2, again, if you get in a Titan because it's cool and you're supposed to do it, but it does nothing for you strategically, you're just gonna fucking die.
Yeah, exactly. Like and so that's maybe actually the thing that most made it feel like a Call of Duty kill streak to me, is that by far the most effective means I found for using a Titan in Titanfall 2 in the beta was to, like, in like the bounty hunt mode or something, to find where a bunch of enemies were, a bunch where like the AI guys were, and be fighting them. And then like if an enemy came in with their Titan, that like they were chasing me, I could duck around a corner, drop my Titan in really quick, jump in it, blow up their Titan, then just get out of mine and let it be an auto Titan. Which that feels like a kill streak. It's just like I drop it in, I kill a guy and a couple of guys really quick. I'm like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. Like that's like the thing. I gotten a couple of extra points by using this. but it's not useful in the long run. It's a very temporary thing in Titanfall 2. Whereas again, in Titanfall 1, if you were really good, you could stay in the Titan for like the entire match after you got it. If you understood how to use the mechanics, if you understood how to avoid taking damage, there is no meaningful way to avoid taking damage in the Titan in Titanfall 2 at all. Like, it's just, like the Titanfall, or the Titan is a complete glass cannon in the beta. It's fucking useless. It's boring to play as because you have no meaningful survival mechanics. It feels like a really bad like arcade mech game at some point where it's like you have almost no mobility, you're just taking damage from everywhere, from enemies so small you can barely see them, and you just get frustrated at it instead of having fun.
And it's funny to me because if you were, really into Titanfall when it was big, if anyone had complaints about the Titans at all, it was that they needed to be buffed a little. Like, they were maybe too susceptible to pilots.
Yeah, especially with, like, the rodeo move and stuff like that the pilots...
Instead, they went completely the other direction. They completely misread the community, nerfed them to shit, and made them a useless part of a game that is called Titanfall.
Yeah, it's the main thing that makes it cool. It is by far my favorite part about Titanfall 1 is getting the Titan and playing in the Titan because they integrated that really well. I really like in Titanfall 1 that all the animations and stuff are first person. In Titanfall 2, they make them all third person, so like when you get in your Titan, there's this weird awkward cut to a third person camera angle of you getting into the Titan as opposed to Titanfall 1, you stay in first person the entire time, so it like grabs you and puts you in the cockpit, and the cockpit like closes on you, and you see all that in first person. That's really cool. That feels like it should have gone the other way around. That in Titanfall 1, they couldn't figure out how to make the animations work in first person, so they did third person ones that like lock you in. And then in Titanfall 2, they figure out, okay, we can make the animations first person, and it's not going to be all weird and clunky and stuff. Instead, it went the other way around. I don't understand how that happened.
Yeah, no, I can't, and I cannot think of an analog for this, where you have something that is so defining to the game, it's in the title, and they take it out. It would be like if in Persona 5, you didn't use personas.
Yeah, it's like you just went around and like shot things with guns, and that was it. Like, there are no magic spells, no abilities, no personas, no shadows.
If you call in a persona, it like will fuck you. It'll be like an auto death.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You can only get one persona in the entire game.
Yes.
So the Titans are just so, again, because that is the one thing I have the least criticism of in Titanfall 1 are the Titans, and somehow they messed all that up. Like, the one thing I really wish that they had for the Titans is the higher customization. Like, unlocking more rifles and stuff for you to be able to use as a pilot and perks, like, that's all fine. But, like, if there's one thing, as someone who's a fan of, like, sort of mech anime and stuff, one of the main things about the fantasy of like mech combat is that you have your mech that is like your mech that is personalized, and like the paint scheme is yours, and like you should be able to, like, if anything, you should be able to really customize your Titan more so than your pilot. And like in Titanfall 1, you could do it more than in Titanfall 2. In Titanfall 2, you have like 3 perks, one of which is useless. Like, the fucking, I don't know what goddamn reason you would ever have for picking the, like, wormhole Titan drop thing over the dome shield, because the dome shield, what it's like, it takes 4 seconds for your Titan to drop in, and it drops in and has a shield on it so you can get in it safely. And then the other one is, instead it only takes 2 seconds to drop in. Who cares? What benefit is there in that? Because it drops in, and if I'm not right there, it immediately starts taking damage. And since it doesn't have recharging shields, the last thing you want is your Titan to be taking damage at all, because you can't repair it. So it's like, you can have 3 perks. One of them is always going to be an extra boost, because you need the extra boost. One of them is always going to be the dome shield, because at least in the beta, there's no other meaningful option to put there. Like, if you could spawn in the Titan immediately, that would be cool. Cutting the timer in half is completely fucking useless. Who gives a shit? Yeah. And then I don't even remember what the other one did. Like, something that's not significant, but like all the weapons and stuff, the abilities of like your laser cannon and that shit, like all of that is grafted into the Titan chassis itself, so you can't customize that at all. I assume there must be like aesthetic customization in the full game. Like, there has got to be different paint schemes and stuff that you can put on. There was no sign of that in the beta. I just assume, since one of the major criticisms of Titanfall 1, or like the most pervasive criticism, was there's not enough customization and like unlocks for pilots and Titans, that they would know like at least like make it so like if you pre-order it, it can be gold. Like at least at that level.
I don't know. This is a game. They're making a game called Titanfall, and they don't know that the Titans are important.
Yeah.
I wouldn't assume they know anything.
Yeah, but it's like, for me, ideally, you should be able to, like in Call of Duty nowadays, like in Advanced Warfare, you can make the most insane classes, like with your just like your soldier stuff, because you can like rip out all the weapons and just have this one pistol, but put like 5 fucking perks on him and stuff, and you can do that stuff. There's so much customization in Call of Duty today, and that's one of the reasons why that's a big complaint with Titanfall, is that their main competitor, like, ever since Black Ops or whenever they added that Pick 10 system,
Black Ops 2.
Yeah, like Call of Duty has had insanely awesome customization. That's maybe my favorite part about Advanced Warfare multiplayer, was just how much you could customize, how like what you came in with and what you were able to do, and it made the multiplayer feel very rich and dynamic. And Titanfall has like the perfect way to do that with the Titans, because there's so much more you can do with a mech in terms of customization as opposed to a soldier, where it's like, I should be able to like make a Titan that has that where you just like rip off all the fucking armor and he just has one giant Titan knife and he's really fast, but he's like can take almost no damage. But all of the abilities and stuff I have around him is that. Or like one that just has one giant railgun, and then all the other stuff I put on him is like missile defense stuff or something to like block incoming grenades and missiles. Like you should be able to have, maybe if it's not necessarily that extreme, you should have customization approaching that level where you can like slot different stuff onto your Titan, and instead of having these like 6 prefab models, you should be able to take any Titan and turn it into any of those other models just through like the stuff you can customize it with, not just have the different prefab ones that you just get and like that's what it is for you.
Well, and this speaks to the larger issue of Titanfall 2, which is that everyone who played Titanfall 1, I think we can all agree, good foundation, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's a really good foundation. You do not need to change the foundation. You can build on it, but the foundation was fine. What they did is they threw the foundation out entirely and just started over with something really bad, and that's just on a business. And I know Titanfall didn't sell like incredibly or anything, but that's still confusing, because if you're making a sequel, implicitly you are saying there was value in the first thing.
Yeah.
But the game itself that you play of Titanfall 2 says there was 0 value in the game you played 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't get that.
Yeah.
So that's the Titans.
Yeah, like as it stands right now, like the Titanfall the customization for the Titans is basically like what it is for Call of Duty before you unlock create a class. Like that's basically what it feels like. So that's not great.
Okay, so that's the Titans. The pilots, there's not much to say. The movement is fine, but the bigger issue here is the maps.
Yes.
The maps are awful.
Yeah, there were only 2 that I played. I don't know if there were maybe more that I never got.
They had a third one in the second week, and I did get that. But
I never saw the third one.
They're all basically the same, where it's a bunch of big, empty, flat space, grassland or something, and then in the middle there's some kind of base, and the bases could be kind of interesting, and they're sort of at Titanfall 1.
I mean, they're pretty small.
Yeah, they're pretty small
structures.
though. But, you know, if you played Titanfall 1, they were mostly base-based. They were built around structures and some open areas, but it really was these intricate sort of spaces and then some open areas for your Titans. But now they've got these just big empty spaces where no one's ever going to be playing.
Yeah.
And it seems like that would be for having, like, more Titans, but because they don't have that, it just winds up being a mostly empty map. You don't run into people that much. I think they've even upped the kill time, so it's a really quick time to death.
Yeah, so it's like Call of Duty level of just like, and someone's dead. Yeah.
But the reason that works in Call of Duty is that you're running around, these maps are small.
Yeah, they're small, tight maps with small like player numbers that are really focused on like short, quick infantry engagements. Like that's what the flow of Call of Duty multiplayer is. That is not how Titanfall 1 worked, at least.
So, I mean, we're talking about the Titans a lot in Titanfall 2, but really in your play experience, they don't factor in.
Yeah.
So you've just got to think about the pilot stuff, and the pilot stuff is mostly you're running around for 30 seconds, a minute, looking for any signs of life. You find something, and either you kill it or they just kill you immediately. And most of there was never any strategic standoff. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Is there was no moment where I found a guy and we like jockeyed for position. It was always I came up behind him and just shot him in the head, and he died. Or he came up behind me and shot me in the head.
Yeah.
And, and even in Call of Duty, you have those moments that are dynamic, like, oh shit, I'm going to use my knife, he's going to shoot me, and there's like a little back and forth.
Or like you see someone through a window that's like running around an alley, and you know, okay, like if I juke around here, I can get around and get the position on them. Like Call of Duty is all about outflanking opponents because it is all about understanding the flow of the map and understanding how to like maneuver in this small, close, like claustrophobic environment to outmaneuver someone and get behind them and get the advantage on them because the kill time is so quick. I prefer Halo style multiplayer, but I really like Call of Duty multiplayer as well. I've played a lot of it. It's like it makes sense. But Titanfall 2 feels like it's was Titanfall 1 didn't quite do well enough, so they're doing what every other fucking shooter has been doing since 2007 and trying to just looking at Call of Duty and trying to put more Call of Duty stuff on it, but without understanding how the Call of Duty stuff works, and you can't just take Call of Duty style infantry engagement and fucking staple it onto this other game.
Which is amazing because this is Respawn Entertainment, the company made from the dregs of what was Infinity Ward.
Yeah, that made Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2.
That started all of this.
Yeah.
No, this feels like a game made by people who have never made a shooter before in their lives.
Yeah, that just like are trying to go after that system. And like the thing about the map design that is really just the most galling is how flat and empty it is. Because like Titanfall 1... most of the maps are very urban and like it's a lot of verticality because of the way that your movement systems work. And so it was a lot of like they weren't really big maps, but they were very dense maps. They had a lot of interconnecting hallways and stuff. They were generally very smart about how they created space for the Titans to move in, but not have that space be like really wide open. Because if it's really wide open, the like pilot Titan engagements aren't very dynamic. And so that level of verticality was really key to the maps in Titanfall 1. And again, we only played 2, or I guess you managed to play the third one as well, but we've only played like 3 maps of Titanfall 2. So maybe they just randomly picked like the 3 worst maps and all the other ones are good.
But when you do a beta, you usually put your best foot forward.
Assuming that these maps are indicative of what Titanfall 2's overall map design is, like all the maps in the beta felt like a Halo, like a big, like capture the flag, like Valhalla style Halo map that nobody put any of the vehicles in, and so like you're just running around on the ground, and it's like it takes like fucking minutes to get anywhere. You don't see anybody. You spend half the time like out into the open, and there's like all these areas of the map that players are never going to go to because there's no reason for them to go there. It just feels like you're supposed to have like some ability to move that is very different from how you can actually move in the game. Like you don't have a mongoose or something.
Here's the funniest thing to me.
Yeah.
Is that those big open areas no one ever goes in, that's where the drones go. That's where like the robot enemies go, the AI ones.
Yeah.
And if you played Titanfall 1, they were there to kind of pad out the ranks. It's like a MOBA style thing so that there's always something to shoot and something to do. You never see those guys though in the actual active areas of Titanfall 2.
They're only in the bounty hunt mode. They only spawn in specific areas during specific waves.
And in the outskirts, where you're not going to be anyway.
Yeah, so you have to go specifically out of your way to engage them. And that, now that you say that, that is, like, I didn't recognize that is probably why those maps are actually designed that way, which makes them kind of pointless for any mode that is not bounty hunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the modes.
Let's talk about the modes.
So, the beta had 2 modes.
3 modes.
I
only played 2 of them because one of them was pilot versus pilot, I just had a moral outrage at like, no, I hadn't I had not played Titanfall at 1. I was like, if I'm going to play a game called Titanfall, I'm going to play one of the modes that has fucking Titans in it, even if it barely has Titans in it. I'm not going to pick pilot versus pilot.
And here's a great illustration of Titanfall 1 to 2.
Yeah.
When Titanfall 1 launched, one of the modes was Titan versus Titan. So you were just in Titans.
That makes sense.
It did not have pilot versus pilot until much later, and that was sort of added by fan demand just because there was a point where it's like, this would be interesting to see.
It makes sense as a like supplementary mode. It's kind of a weird idea as a mode to put in for your beta as one of the 3.
Yes, but I love this. That Titanfall 1, you've got Titan versus Titan. Titanfall 2, you got pilot versus pilot. That's the game right there.
Yeah, so I didn't touch pilot versus pilot at all. No. Because every time I thought, I was like, I should play it at least once, and I was like, but no, fuck that, no, I'm not going to do this. It's stupid. Because the other 2 modes are... Because I'm sure pilot versus pilot is just fucking like team deathmatch, like whatever. Yeah. The other 2 modes, oh boy, man.
So we got Bounty Hunt.
Bounty Hunt, which is sort of like the main mode, it seemed like they were sort of...
For some god only knows reason. And then Amped Hardpoint. And you'll notice they have no just normal like attrition deathmatch with the main... Titans and pilots.
Yeah. The only deathmatch mode was the one that had no Titans in it, and they didn't. And the only mode that had any AI at all was the bounty hunt mode. And as someone who's not a huge fan of the AI stuff in Titanfall 1, that doesn't bother me that much. but I would prefer, instead of them stripping it out entirely, them finding a way to make it more meaningful.
Yeah.
I don't think Bounty Hunt does that, but...
Well, either strip it out entirely and make the game tighter, which you could do, or rework it in a way that feels like now it's part of the meat of the game.
Yeah, and it makes sense and it works better, but they didn't do that.
Bounty Hunt, I never figured it out. What the fuck is Bounty Hunt?
The Bounty Hunt is a way bigger conversation. Let's talk about Amped Hardpoint first.
Okay.
Because we can get through that really quick.
I never figured out this one either. Hardpoint was the best of the normal modes in the original Titanfall.
It's domination in Call of Duty, it's territories in Halo, or like whatever the fuck they renamed it.
It's a very good version of it because in Titanfall 1 it showed just how good the map design was in that game, because it was really built around defensible points. It was like the opposite of the problem like Destiny has with that, where Destiny sometimes and Halo 5 have these points where it's like, that's indefensible, what are you doing?
Yeah, like that one map on Halo 5 where it's just like one of these like hard points or whatever is just like exposed on every side and there's no way to defend it. Yeah. So I don't think Amped Hardpoint had quite that issue with it in Titanfall 2. It was wet. It's a domination mode. It was fine. But like the thing that didn't make sense, and it took me I had to play and this is true of Bounty Hunt as well, I had to play like 3 or 4 matches of this before just to try to figure out how the mode actually worked, because it's not just hardpoint, it's amped hardpoint, and that amped part didn't make sense. I'm just curious, because I figured out how it works. Did you ever figure out how it works?
No, so you take, let me try to explain it.
Okay.
You take the points, which is sort of normal.
Yes, and as you have a point, it just gives you points into your score to win.
And then you can amp the points by staying there longer.
Yes.
And there is a separate mechanic. I don't know if this is related, because I think it's also in Bounty Hunt, where you can amp your weapons.
Yeah, that is like an unlockable thing. They're like one of the things you can switch out of like a specific ability. I thought the same thing. That's not... Okay. Has no relation to amped hardpoint, because for the longest time, I thought that it was like if you get kills with amped weapons in amped hardpoint, it gives you more, because one of the descriptions kind of made it sound like that. But it doesn't work that way. You basically had it right. That it is... And this took me a while to figure out exactly how it worked, because when I figured out, it's like, okay, you take the point, and then as normal, there are 3 points on a map. If the team captures a point, as long as they have that point captured, it will add 1 point to their score every second or however long it is until you win. And so the basic sort of strategy is to try to hold 2 of the 3 points for as long as possible. There's generally your point and the middle point, because that will get you to win. And if you want to try to take all 3 points and stuff, you can do that. But it's domination. It's not crazy. We've been playing this basic multiplayer first-person shooter modes for more than a decade at this point. But then I was like, oh, so the amp thing, it's if you stay in the point for extra long, and you can capture the point twice. And so then it gives you twice as many points. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting idea. You can reinforce your hard points. Okay. And so then it was when I realized that's how it worked, I decided, well, then I'll just play one of these matches just doing that. And so when, in my head, how it worked was you take the point, you capture the hard point, and you have it captured, and then if you stay for extra long and it takes longer, then eventually you can kind of double capture it, and it gives you double points, which that idea makes sense in the way that, if you just can't capture the other 2 points, you can reinforce your base's hard point in such a way that forces the other team to go after you, because you're both capturing stuff at the same time. That kind of was oh, that would be an interesting wrinkle. But that's not quite how it works. Instead, and this makes no fucking sense, if you amp a hard point, it only stays amped for 10 seconds or something. It's not a very long time. It's a temporary thing. And what that means and once I figured out how this worked, I basically just won 3 amped hardpoint matches in a row. Never getting a Titan, because doing stuff with the hardpoints doesn't give you a huge amount of score towards Titans. But I won 3 in a row just by playing the objective, because nobody else knew how the mode worked. Because the way you win amped hardpoint is you let your team just do whatever they're doing, and they're fighting with the other team over the midpoint. Sometimes you have the midpoint, sometimes they have the midpoint. But all you do is you stay at your base, and you stay in your hard point in hidden in a corner. You sort of pay attention a little bit to make sure that enemies aren't coming in, but you just keep on amping your base point over and over again to get the extra boosted 10 point or 10 seconds or whatever. every once in a while, and then you're kind of looking at your phone or something while you're doing that, because you will just win. As long as the other team is not doing that, you will accrue enough extra points from that and your team periodically capturing the midpoint that you will win the match. And you will have the most objective score of anyone in the game. You will never get a Titan. You will never see anyone else. You will never shoot anything. You will just stay there crouched in a corner, and you will win every single fucking time. I guarantee it, because someone who never played a competitive game in their entire life came up with that idea for a mode and had no idea what they were actually incentivizing the player to do, which was just to camp your base point for the entire game. If you do not have one person, at least one person, camping your base point the entire game, you are not playing the mode right, and that makes no fucking sense.
They made camping the video game.
It basically, it is, if you are trying to actually win and play competitively, it is a necessary strategy. And if the other team isn't employing it, you're going to win almost no matter what. Unless your team is so bad that you all keep on getting killed constantly and they just have all 3 points the entire time. And other than in that situation, you will win using the strategy.
So, okay, Titanfall 1, we have a game that is arguably to some people too chaotic.
Yeah.
In Titanfall 2, a mode where you just camp.
Yeah, where you do nothing. Where you can win the mode by literally doing nothing.
Bounty Hunt.
Bounty Hunt. So Bounty Hunt is... Once you figure out how it works, it's kind of a decent mode. It has some strategy to it. But it is one of the most confusing, poorly explained, abstract bullshit modes I've seen in a multiplayer shooter maybe ever.
Should I try to explain this one, too?
You go ahead and try to explain it.
I never figured it out.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out how to play it.
All right, so you kill people and you get money, but only in certain periods, because there are rounds where you're not getting money. Is that right?
Sure, just keep on going.
Okay. And then there are periods where you have to go deposit your money into a bank. Yeah. And it's not as funny as it sounds. You don't get to in your Titan and go to Wells Fargo.
Although it is literally American US dollars is the money sign.
Yes.
It's just so you get $4 for killing a dude and go deposit it in the bank. Because apparently the dollar got inflation just went backwards at a really extreme rate at some point in the future.
Or you just don't. You just kill for fun and you take as little money as possible.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then you go and you have to drop your money off in a hub, and then it counts for score. But again, you can't just always go there. You have to sometimes go there. Is that basically it?
That is basically it. And so I'll try to go into more detail. And I should say, and I'll note when we get to them, there are things that even after playing probably 8, 9, maybe 10 matches of Bounty Hunt, and mostly playing Bounty Hunt to try to figure out how the mode works, there are still things about Bounty Hunt that I don't actually really know 100% how it works, and that's a big fucking problem when it's just a competitive multiplayer shooter. It's not fucking space chess or something. It doesn't need to be this complicated. But so, how Bounty Hunt works is it is basically, you have 2 teams of 5 or however many people it is, and it's set up in waves that So basically all your odd number waves. Wave 1 is it drops in AI dudes, and it's kind of like Halo 5 Warzone in this way, where if you kill AI dudes, you get money, you get bounty for it, and then in the next wave you have a short 1 minute wave or whatever where the banks appear, and you run to the bank and you stash all the cash that you just made in the bounty wave, and then the next bounty wave starts, and the same thing happens, only then, I think it's maybe after the second or third bounty wave, then Titan bounties that are in NPC Titans drop in, and if you kill them, you get a really big payout, which is like in Halo 5 Warzone when you kill the big enemies, that has the exact same problem that Halo 5 Warzone has, that is, the only person that gets the bounty is the last hit person. So the person who kills the thing, who delivers the finishing blow, gets all the money. So you can do 99% of the work and get none of the payout because, fucking again, the people who designed these games apparently just don't understand how competitive modes work. And that's a fucking bullshit mode that's no fun to play. Or that's a bullshit mechanic that's no fun to deal with.
It's one of the magic things about Overwatch that we're going to have to revisit and talk about at some point is how well it both encourages team play and doesn't do that kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
Where the point and the scoring systems are very fair and it eliminates those kind of things that just feel bullshit.
Yeah. But Titanfall 2 doesn't do that. So
Blizzard is a company that tends to know what they're doing.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, so the basic structure of the bounty hunt is you have bounty waves where you should be killing NPC enemies because they give you like a lot of bounty if you kill enough of them, and then in the bank waves you cash them in. Then where the other part of the game comes in is you have two teams competing. So you're both competing over the same bounty scores, and if you kill, and this is the part where I don't really understand how all of this works. Because one, I don't know if I think you do get score just for killing enemies. I don't know how much, but like I only ever like because when you play bounty hunt, you will get to like before the first bounty wave has ended, and both teams will already have score before the banks have spawned, and that makes no sense. So I think you get that just by killing enemy players. I'm not sure, but if you get killed, this I know for sure. If you get killed, you lose at least half of your bounty. It might be more, but it's like around half of your bounty you will lose. I don't think the person who killed you get it. I don't think that the other team it just automatically scores for the other team. I'm not sure. I don't know if that bounty just goes away or if it benefits the other team in some way. I have no fucking clue. Like, because it's just like it's really hard to sort of figure that out in the chaos of everything already going on in the match.
It sounds like what this really should be is like a variation on Kill Confirmed, which is the Call of Duty mode.
Yeah.
And instead of going and getting the enemy's tags, you would get their money.
Yeah. But or like Headhunter and Halo Reach.
Sure, yeah.
That way, yeah. Yeah, that's like, and that would be a much better mode. And we'll get into like dissecting this mode after I finish fully explaining it. So, but I think that's mostly it. So then, like, so basically, the push and pull of the match is like although here's another one of the poorly designed elements is, and it has to do with like those bounty titans. Is that not only is that bounty only go to the person who deals the finishing blow, but the bounty waves are set up in such a way that it's like Family Feud or something, where the further you go and the more bounty waves that happen, the bigger payout is like possible in each of the bounty waves because there's just more bounty available. So like the way that escalates means that like the first two bounty waves are completely meaningless because you're not going to get enough points, and the other team can get a huge number of points in the later bounty waves if you're not doing very well. But that's the basic structure of it. You're either trying to accumulate bounty or kill enemies so they can accumulate bounty, and then when the bank waves happen, you just go cash it in. And the mode does not explain any of that to you well at all, and then sort of getting that around in your head and figuring out how you're meant to play the mode and play it well takes a long time. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I understand this mode. I understand how to play it. I feel like I can play this objective and sort of like play it strategically. And that was kind of fun once I got to that point. But even then, by far the biggest issue with bounty hunt mode is that while I can sit here and explain the rules and like they kind of make sense, like when you're actually playing the game, nothing about that, like the structure in the rule set makes any intuitive sense at all because all the objective is completely abstracted. There's nothing intuitive, there's nothing physical about it. It's all just bullshit. Because it's like, there's no reason that killing these AI guys should give you this bounty. There's no reason why you should only be able to cash in that bounty every 2 minutes or whatever it is. There's no reason for the multiplayer to be set up in any way at all. It's just completely abstract reasoning. There's nothing physical about it. It's not like Slayer, where it's like, you kill enemy, you get point. Your team kill more enemy than other team kill you, you win. Like, that's all it is. Anyone can understand that. Like, the hard point, cut out the amps part, but just hard point is you take, like, area that is blocked off with, like, big magic walls that then turn into your color, and then, like, you, as you have area, you are winning. You have more area for more time, you win. Like, it's just territory control. That makes sense. It is, like, linked to something physical, a physical space in the game world that you control, that is now your color. That makes sense. Capture the flag is you have flag, they have flag. You get their flag, don't let them get you flag. That is capture the flag. Makes sense. It's a physical object. Like, you can play capture the flag in real life.
So you're saying you should be able to explain first-person shooter multiplayer modes to a caveman.
Exactly. Like, that's, if you can't, then you're running into this issue where it's like, even if I understand how to play bounty hunt, it takes a while to do that. And then it's like...
It's never intuitive.
Yeah, it's meaningless. It's just like, why does killing this guy give me $5 American and why can I only go to the bank every 2 minutes? Like, there's nothing about that makes any sense. It's all just fucking bullshit. Like, even like Kill Confirmed or Headhunter, like, some of the aspects of that mode could be very abstract, but instead they link it to a physical object that exists in the game, which is you kill people, they drop a tag or they drop a skull, you pick that up, and then you go to your base and, like, cash it in. Like, that works. That makes sense. Anyone can understand that because the objective is clear. It's physical. It's real. Even if it's represented in a digital world. Like, if you tried to play Bounty Hunt in real life with actual people by, like, throwing snowballs at them or something, like, you'd have to get out a fucking calculator and, like, all this shit. Like, it would be so hard to do. The best video game mode, you should be able to replicate somehow in real life on, like, a basketball court or something, you know? Like, because that's how, like, humans are wired. That's how competitive modes work. Like, there needs to be something simple, a basic objective you can approach, and then actually accomplishing that objective should be very sophisticated. Like, basketball is, you take the ball, you put it in the fucking hoop. Like, it's not insane. Like, anyone can sort of figure it out. There are, like, specific rules for how to dribble and stuff like that, but those are just minor complications. Like, the basic objective of the game is clear to anyone who's watching it.
Football, get to end zone.
Yeah, exactly. Take thing, put it in place.
Yes.
Like, that's all it is. Like, it's not like, tackle this dude and then I'll give you this sticker that says that you have $10, but don't let someone tackle you because then I have to take that you only get $5, and then at some point you have to make the decision of whether you go back and cash in your $5 or you keep on trying to, like, prevent your enemy team from getting more money. Like, I like the strategic element of the mode, and it has a lot more sort of strategy to it once you get down to it than attrition did in Titanfall, but there's something that's lacking when all that strategy is linked to something that is abstract and makes no sense and is just, like, fake. Like, even if it was something as small as, like, when you killed someone, you went and, like, picked up their wallet, it would, like, at least have something, you know? And, like, when you went in, like, I really wish... This isn't my joke, I saw this on the internet, but I thought it was really a really funny thing to say, but also kind of a smart point. When you go to the bank, there should be a first-person animation as you're cashing in money where you just pull out a wallet and throw dollar bills at the bank, you know? Like, you just make it rain on that bitch. Because it's like... Because all it is you run up and then you hold down X and you see the number at the corner of the screen go down, and that's it. Like, and you see, if you look up at the top of the screen, you can kind of see your score go up. Well, the score, like, font is really small, so it's sort of hard to see. It's like, yeah, the Bounty Hunt, terrible mode, just conceptually. Like, it makes no sense. It has no reason for being that way. It is certainly not a mode I would ever hang my hat on as, like, the premier mode that you debut in this beta. That, like, who knows, like, because part of me thinks that maybe that's the mode that they're thinking is going to be the main mode in Titanfall 2 in the full game. And if that is the case, they're making a huge fucking mistake.
Well, no, like in Destiny, whenever they would show off Destiny multiplayer, you play Control.
Right.
And while Control is not the only mode in Destiny, it's obviously the premier, it's the typical
it's the
mode.
Main mode, like
yeah.
Attrition was in Titanfall 1.
Yeah. Or like if you ever play a Halo beta, they're going to give you Slayer.
Exactly.
That kind of thing, yeah. God, I want to thank EA and Respawn for doing this beta so that I know I don't have to pay for this piece of shit game.
Yeah, it does make that, like, decision of, do I want to get the Call of Duty game that looks like crazy and weird and going into space and all that shit and just, like, go down that journey that's, like, a big question mark, or do I want to get this Titanfall 2 game that's like, well, the multiplayer is fine, but some of it is really dumb? No, I don't think I want to play Titanfall 2. Makes that decision easier for me, at least.
Yep, and, you know, I know Titanfall 2 technically also has a campaign. To me, when it comes to Titanfall, any first or single-player stuff is just a bonus. I don't really care about it. I'm there for the multiplayer.
I'm very curious about the single-player campaign, but I would not buy... It's the same with, like, Call of Duty. Like, I really want to play that single-player campaign and see what it is, but, like, I wouldn't buy the game on the back of the single-player alone.
Well, and that's the insurance, right? Yeah. If we get Infinite Warfare and we don't like the campaign, we know multiplayer will be fun. Like, that's Call of Duty has, like, a threshold where, like, it'll be at least this good.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's got Modern Warfare, so you have that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So that game will be kind of worth getting either way. But
yeah, and man, some of the video of the fucking remastered Modern Warfare multiplayer that came out of PAX, I think, is where they're showing it. I did not realize how nostalgic I was for the multiplayer. I saw, like, just someone running around one of the maps with an MP5, and I was like, I didn't think that I knew the Call of Duty 4 multiplayer maps the way I know, like, Halo 3 maps, but I totally do.
That's
like,
funny.
I can recognize all this shit at a glance.
And they're going to have all 16, they've said now. So that's nuts. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
But Titanfall 2 is awful, at least based on what they've shown.
Yeah, on the beta.
And-
So hopefully, there are things that they can do, they can tweak to sort of make it better. But some of the
It's
stuff
so
with
broken.
Bounty Hunt is not a mode. I think you can't just easily fix it. The map design, you can't just easily fix it. And some of the Titan stuff is could be probably fixed in patches, but it's so severe that
What they need to do if they're smart is pull the game, delay it, take a year, 6 months, whatever, and rebuild it. I mean, it's not ready for prime time. It's not going to satisfy anyone, especially with a Call of Duty that is grabbing people's attentions, whether positively or negatively. It's getting the press coming out the same week.
Yeah, and Battlefield 1 coming in around the same time as well.
Yeah, Titanfall's not going to win that.
Yeah, it is also it should be noted we are not the only two people having this reaction to the beta.
Oh, no.
The response from the Titanfall fan base at large has been so massively negative.
And it's kind of funny because I saw some of that before I played it, and I always think people are. My default assumption is it's hyperbole.
Yeah, which is a good default assumption on the internet.
And it's not with this one. This is one area where I will be on the negative hype train. It's really bad.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and move on. We're going to hit some news, and then at the end we're going to have one more topic, which is about some No Man's Sky kerfuffles. But let's hit some of these news items, Sean.
Yeah.
Nothing too big here, but I wanted to talk about some interesting things. First off, so we talked 2 weeks ago, I think, on the podcast about Batman: The Killing Joke, the DC animated movie that was awful in a number of ways.
Yes.
But DC has announced their next animated movie, which is called Batman: Return of the Caped Crusaders, and it is an animated sequel to the Adam West series with Adam West, Burt Ward, and I forget her name, but one of the women who played Catwoman. And it'll basically be in that style, although it's animated. So it's going to be like the Batman 66 TV series. I didn't love the trailer they put out for this.
I didn't watch the trailer.
It's kind of hacky. It's okay. It's not really funny, but it's got Adam West and Burt Ward doing a joke. It's not a scene from the movie, I should say.
Okay.
It's just a little announcement thing. But I like the sound of this because I think I even said when we watched the Batman 66 movie and talked about it, and we've talked about some of the TV show. I love that stuff, and I would love someone to do Batman in that style again. And this, if it's the right people working on it, this sounds like a cool idea.
Yeah, no, I'm into that sort of goofy Batman. It works well.
And I think maybe it's a little out of date at the moment just because Lego Batman's about to come out, and I feel that's doing it for the 2000s. And so maybe we don't need this, but hey,
But it's a direct-to-DVD kind of thing that DC puts out.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, so this could be fun. I just wanted to mention it because I don't know how much press it's getting, but that could be a cool thing, and it's definitely aimed at more of a niche Batman audience because that's not as commonly known these days.
Yeah.
But
man, talk about fucking swinging in the complete opposite direction after adapting The Killing Joke to then let's do an Adam West thing.
Yes.
The two main super extremes of the Batman character, one after another.
Yeah, and it does speak again to the DC animated stuff. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
But they go for it.
It's fun that they can experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Other home video news. I just wanted to touch on this because it's so stupid. It's a few weeks out of date now.
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay, so Sean, have you seen... They're releasing, finally, a big Middle-earth Peter Jackson box set.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so, we've never had... They finally finished the Hobbit trilogy. We always thought they're going to put the two trilogies together, right?
Yeah.
The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. Maybe we'll get some new bonuses. It could be cool.
Yeah.
Didn't love The Hobbit, but it's good enough.
Yeah, and they do such great production featurette stuff.
Yeah.
That's worth seeing.
Maybe, and it might just be cool to have it all in one place.
Yeah.
So they're finally doing that. It comes out. It's an Amazon exclusive. And the first thing we see is that it's $800.
That's a significant amount of money. That will win you for some fucking bounty hunt, man.
Yep, and everyone's
throw that in the bank.
And everyone's thinking that's got to be a mistake. Because the same day they announced a theatrical edition. This is for the extended cuts. They announced a theatrical box set that's $69.99, and everyone thought, oh, they just added an extra 9 to the $7.99. It's going to be $79.99, right?
Yeah, that is a far more reasonable price for a set of 3 movies or 6 movies or whatever.
Nope, it's $800. It has zero, zilch, nada in terms of new features. It has the extended cuts of all the movies, the extended bonus features. It also has the theatrical cut bonus features. So that's the only thing that would be new if you only own the extended cuts. But they're not new. They're out there. You can find them. In the case of Lord of the Rings, they've been released 50 times.
Yeah.
They do not have physical copies of the theatrical cuts at all. You can get those as a digital copy with the set, but they do not have Blu-rays of the theatrical cuts. That's an omission.
Yeah.
So no new stuff. You're missing stuff. They do not have the Hobbit movies in 3D, which for some people, you might want the 3D Blu-rays.
Yeah, if you have a 3D TV.
And for that price, you should get the 3D Blu-rays.
For that price, you should get everything. Like, you should get everything ever, everything that references Lord of the Rings, you should just get.
And the only new thing is packaging, where the discs are in things that look like leather books, and you get a shelf, and not a big shelf, just for the DVD-sized DVDs.
You probably already have a shelf where you put your DVDs. So.
Yes, so it comes with a shelf, and you could also just go build a shelf. It's not hard.
Yeah,
it's just slabs
of wood. I
yeah.
have built a shelf in middle school, so I can do it.
You can do it.
It's been a while, but I probably could do it.
And that's $800. Holy shit!
$800 is a lot of money. Like, I was just trying, while you were explaining all that, Jonathan, I was trying to think, I bet you could, with just a bit of effort of getting a couple of things on sale, you could get a PS4, an Xbox One, and a Wii U for $800.
Like, totally could. That'd be easy.
The Wii U with is getting down a little bit, a couple spots, but if.
But there have been Xbox Ones. If you don't want an S, you can get those for $250.
Okay,
so
yeah, there you go. That does it then.
Yeah.
Totally. Or if you don't want the Wii, you could get a 3DS.
3DS probably smarter.
Yeah.
Investment.
But you could get basically all the modern right now on the market consoles,
and all of them would probably be bundles, so you'd get games.
would get 1 to 2 games for each of them, as well as a controller and everything, for the price of getting most of, but not all of, the content made for the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogy.
Now, the real reason people are so mad is that for years, and I'm talking back to when Lord of the Rings was still coming out on DVD, Peter Jackson, and the guy who makes the bonus features, his name is Michael Pellerin, he's the producer on that stuff, have been talking about how they have held some stuff back in case they ever did a really big set, including deleted scenes, so stuff that wasn't in the extended cut. Earlier things they did shoot a version of Helm's Deep where Arwen was there.
Oh,
stuff
right.
that we never saw. So that could be cool to see. They have more bonus features. They wanted to maybe go to a retrospective, now that it's 10 years later, what does everyone think about Lord of the Rings? Do some tell-all stuff.
Climb up Mount Everest and find Viggo Mortensen in the cave eating like a bear alive.
Yes.
Ask him how he feels about Lord of the Rings.
So just all this kind of stuff. There's lots of cool stuff you could get, right?
Yeah.
And they offered it to Warner Brothers and said, this is what we want to do. Warner Brothers said, we're not spending a cent on this. And said no. And this is confirmed with Peter Jackson. He has confirmed to the OneRing.net that they offered it, and Warner Brothers said no. And Warner Brothers decided just to repackage, but at $800. And the real thing that is sad about this isn't, I'm okay. I have Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit on Blu-ray. I would like the new bonus features. It doesn't destroy my life. They're fine. What I would actually like is remastered versions of the theatrical cuts of Lord of the Rings, because those are in kind of poor quality on Blu-ray. And while the extended cuts are my preferred versions, the theatrical, I think, deserve to have the same level of restoration. But they're not even doing anything with those. So that's kind of sad when you think about it that way. But that's one thing. So that's for these movies. But it really speaks to the larger trend in home video at the moment, which is that home video is becoming a niche market. When people say it's going away, that's not true. It's just transforming into something else.
Yeah.
And if you know what you're doing, and people who buy home video stuff or physical media, they have a certain expectation of quality. And if you meet that, they will give you their money. Look at the Criterion Collection, for instance, or the other number of boutique labels that have actually popped up in the last few years or have flourished in the kind of Criterion model of, we're going to do good restorations, good packaging, some nice bonus features, just something that makes it more than what you would ever get on a digital release.
Exactly.
That's the reason to do it. And with this, they are so spitting in the face of their fans, and it just speaks to the larger issue of the studios not understanding the value of home video. This could be a significant revenue stream, a niche revenue stream, but a significant one if you put the work in. And I don't think it's very expensive work, especially for movies that are this big and this good, but you've got to actually do the work. And Warner Brothers is the worst offender. Over the last few years, they have stopped producing bonus features almost entirely. They are using very low bit rates, for instance, on all their TV titles, so there's no real reason to buy them on Blu-ray at all, because they literally use the same bit rate as streaming. So that's not really going to cut it for Blu-ray. The packaging's not very good, and when they do special editions like this, they overprice and don't put a lot in. And it's sad because we really did go through, when DVD was big, there was this heyday of special editions and cool packaging and stuff that really helped you appreciate the craft and art of film and was very useful. And that legacy does live on in these boutique labels like Criterion, but it doesn't come from the studios much, if at all, anymore, with very rare exceptions. And that's disappointing, especially when it comes to modern classics like these, that the best they can do is something stupid like this where it's clearly aimed at people who know the material because no one else is going to spend $800.
Yeah.
But it gives you literally nothing new that you don't already have. So I don't know who the hell the audience is. And it speaks to, again, the studios, the people who make these now, that produce these special editions, are not filmmakers. They are not people who know the material. They're marketing majors who have no idea how to treat films. And it's very sad.
And it's like, in this particular instance, it's sort of like a bigger bummer, just because I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, the special features on the extended editions for Lord of the Rings is like something that got me interested in film as something more than just the thing you watch, because it gave you so much insight into like the miniatures and like the acting and the special effects and the makeup and like the everything with Gollum and the art and the music and like Peter Jackson's process and like shooting with like other teams and assistant directors. Like you got such a comprehensive look, especially across all 3 extended editions, at like what went into making these ridiculous, like complex, giant blockbuster studio movies, and like all the ingenuity that went into making this like fucking giant master work. And like you just don't get that a lot of the time, especially you didn't get it a lot before and you don't get it a lot now.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, even, the Hobbit extended cuts got all the video stuff, and that was great. And apparently it's coming out now that Peter Jackson and Michael Pellerin had to fight very hard for Warner Brothers to pay for that. They almost didn't get to do it. And that would have been very sad, because that's the best part of those Hobbit sets is the appendices. But the appendices on the Hobbit stuff are only video features. They didn't include any of the cool stuff you got on the Lord of the Rings, like some of the packaging, which was cool, but also the art galleries and some of the previses and stuff like that, where you could kind of explore at your own pace. That was one of the coolest things about DVDs back in the day. Yeah. 1 commentary instead of 4. Do I need 4 audio commentaries? Maybe not, but it's nice.
Yeah, but if like you have audio commentary from like the fucking special effects team or whatever, like the VFX team or like the sound effect team or something, like for a lot of people that's going to mean nothing. But if you're someone who wants to get into sound design, like
it means a lot.
Yeah, that's like one of the most valuable resources in the world. Like it's something that for 99% of your audience is going to do nothing, but for that 1%, like that could be like the next Burt Ward or something,
Absolutely. And audio commentaries, they cost nothing. You have to pay people for their time and for a recording session. Yeah. And to a studio like Warner Brothers, that literally is nothing. I mean, so this is disappointing. Again, it speaks to a bigger issue with, I think, exhibition in general. Theatrical exhibition, we've talked about many times, is shit at the moment for movies. Home video distribution is shit from the major studios, and digital distribution is often shit because you just get the movie in much lower quality than you would on home video, so you're just getting fucked 6 ways in 6 directions.
Yeah.
If you want to watch modern movies, and this is the biggest issue Hollywood is facing, is they're either going to start treating consumers like people again and trying to get them to come to the studios, to get us to come to them.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to keep doing this where they just expect our money and they're going to shrivel up and die.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just like a weird trend where like, everything is evolving so much, and some people seem like Criterion has been on top of it for a long time, and then other people seem to just like not quite understand how to sort of manage their like digital streaming side and their physical media side and their theater side and all that stuff. And WB really this year like just seems to like not understand how to do anything.
No, I mean, they're not even. The exciting thing for some people, home video enthusiasts, would be like to do the 4K Blu-rays of these movies.
Yeah,
they're not even doing that. For The Hobbit, at least, that would be easy. They were shot in 5K. You just have to do the HDR pass. You're done. It's not that hard. They're not even doing that. Yeah. And it's like, that's sad.
It's like when you're doing the bare minimum for your home video release, that's where it's just like...
Doing the bare minimum and charging $800. Yeah. I mean, here's a comparison. I have this really cool Harry Potter set that Warner Brothers released. It's the Harry Potter Ultimate Collection. They made a limited number, so I don't think you can get them anymore. But it's got all 8 movies, It's got every movie on Blu-ray, on DVD. It's got every bonus feature ever produced for those, plus all the like retailer exclusives from over the years, plus a new bonus disc. It's got the 3D Blu-rays for the last 2 movies. It's got digital copies of everything and a bunch of physical goodies. It's all put in this like replica of Harry's Hogwarts trunk that's like a big toy box you open up. It's really neat. I don't remember what like the MSRP was, but it was no more than like $400, and I paid $150, and I felt that was totally fair.
Yeah,
and that was only a few years ago, and they've fallen to this, where you don't even get all the disc-based content. It's insane.
Yeah. It's a real bummer. It's like someone who like really appreciates it when you get like a really good physical version of a movie that like. If it's something like Godzilla, like the Criterion release of Godzilla or something, where it's like, this is a movie like I have written about, it is a movie I will likely write about again. Like, I know lots of people aren't going to like need something like this, but there are resources here about like the subtitles and stuff of like the translations that you've done and like the essays you've written and like the packaging and the ability to sort of like scan the movie easily, like all that stuff. There are people, and it's like not just a handful. There are like thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands for certain movies of people that are interested on an academic level, if nothing else, on that kind of stuff. And those resources should be made available.
Yes. So, very disappointing. I think. I don't know what I'm surprised Warner Brothers hasn't just canceled this, given the backlash. I mean, if you want a good afternoon, just go like a fun afternoon. Just go read the Amazon reviews for this. It's hilarious because it's all 1 star, except there are some 5-star, and you go and you're like, who's giving this 5-star? And they're all joke reviews, and they're pretty funny actually. So
because I mean, you invite like a particular kind of ire because the only people who are going to be interested in home video releases of movies are like people that are really invested in film and stuff like that, like us. So it's like you're not getting like the average consumer. You're getting the people who are very passionate about this specific thing that are going to spend a lot of time like roasting you for it.
Yep. So if you like Lord of the Rings, you can get an $800 shelf. That's pretty much the takeaway here.
Or you can get a shelf and then sell it for $800. See if you can scam someone on that the way WB is trying to. All
right, let's talk about some video game stuff, Sean.
Okay.
Want to do a little follow-up. Final Fantasy 15.
Yes.
Last two podcasts ago, we announced we did not announce. We reported how it had been delayed.
Yeah.
At the time, it was actually not official yet. It's become official.
Because of course it is.
Of course it is. So it's going to be out November 29th. But what I wanted to follow up with is Hajime Tabata, the director, has given some statements and interviews since then, and I really loved his logic for why they delayed it, which basically boiled down to we probably could have gotten it ready with a day 1 patch, but we would have really preferred to just have whatever that material would be on the disc. And he said, because we had data that a lot of people don't have internet connections, and also just it's a hassle, we wanted you to be able to have our game, put it in, and just play it.
Yeah.
I love this guy.
Yeah, Tabata has given some really great interviews over the past few months, like leading up to the release of Final Fantasy 15, where he's just, it feels like it would be rare for like a company in America to talk like this, or someone from a company in America to talk like this, but particularly coming from Japan, where the corporate culture is so hush hush. Look at anything coming from Nintendo for that kind of shit. Like anyone who emails Nintendo about anything, any reporter gets fucking nothing. But like here, you get Tabata just like saying like, we decided to delay because we probably could have done a day 1 patch, but the frame rate's not quite what we need it to be yet, so we're just going to take a couple of months to fix that. Like he just says what they're doing. He doesn't give any of the marketing bullshit about we just we are so close to getting it done, but we just wanted to give that special extra pass, for our fans, because he said our frame rate's kind of shit in this one boss fight. It's basically like what he says, we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make it just a day 1 patch. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's even explained because reporters got to at PAX and some different places and Gamescom play parts of the game.
Yeah.
And everyone's been very impressed. The reception has been...
I'm very excited that people who played a couple of hours and stuff have been pretty positive about it.
But they've been playing from the beginning, and some of those reporters have asked Tabata, they said, it was running great. What's the issue that you need to fix? And he said, well, the issue the parts we're starting to press run great, but later in the game we're still optimizing. And
it's I've read so many interviews with game people over my life. I've never seen anyone say that ever, even though we always know it's true.
But you know what I love?
Yeah.
That kind of honesty to me shows confidence.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
great.
that you wouldn't say it if you didn't know you could fix it. So he's saying, like, that to me makes me more confident in the game because the guy making it is confident enough to just be honest.
Yeah, it's like, obviously they know the issues with the game, and him just being able to say, it's like, we of course we're showing like the most polished part of the game to the press. Like, of course you think it's fine. Like, but you have this is like a 50-hour long game. Like, we haven't sort of optimized everything to this degree yet.
You know, we'll see how good the game is when it comes out, but I will just say they have a great spokesman for it in this guy.
Yeah, he's great. Like, every interview he gives, like, he just, like, every, like, other answer is a real gem.
Yeah.
Like, but not in, like, a way that's, like, it's funny, but it's also kind of heartwarming, because it's like, you just don't get this degree of honesty from anyone in this industry.
No. So excited for this game. Excited to play it on November 29th, and I'm excited that I'll be able to put it in and play it without a patch.
Yeah.
That's great. You know, day one patches are fine, but I do like when you don't have to have them.
Yeah.
It's like, that is still, we should say, that is still the preferable state of being.
Yeah. Especially nowadays when, like, fucking patches can be like 5, 6, 7 gigs, you know?
Yeah.
You can get, those data rates can kind of explode.
Yes. All right, the PlayStation 4. Let's do some news here. Later this week, so on the next episode of the podcast, we'll cover this.
Yeah.
Sony is having an event. They are going to announce the PlayStation 4 Nioh, and we found out they're probably going to announce something around in the terms of PlayStation 4 Slim.
Yeah.
And we know this because the console leaked in spectacular fashion.
If you want, you can go read reviews of PlayStation 4 Slim from, like, full publications available now.
Yes, you can see videos, unboxings. It is, I've never seen something like this where the thing is out, it is in the wild, some basically copies of it have leaked, some units I should say,
yeah.
and journalists have them and have posted video. It is real, it is not a hoax, we know it exists.
It would be the most amazing hoax in the world if it was a hoax.
I know.
Like, the level of insane coordination it would take to pull off a hoax like this would make the world a much more, like, mysterious place.
And for some reason, it's been weeks, Sony still won't comment.
Yeah.
Sony really, I do think, has a problem with that this year between the Nioh leaks and this, where I get you want to do your big grand unveiling. You could still just put out a press release saying, we're releasing it. It's real.
Yeah.
You know, because it's very annoying when they just... Again, it's ludicrous. We know everything about the Slim now, more than we're going to get from their official announcement.
Yeah, it's unfortunate with this one in particular, just because it leaked so close to, like, because by the time this leaked, they had basically already announced the event that they were going to do. That we all know, obviously, they're going to show this thing off with the Nioh, and it's not like with the Nioh that was like almost a year before. It's like when they were going to actually announce it, so. Like, I could kind of see them not wanting to have to directly address it and stuff, but, like, they should have just said, yeah. Because it's also, it's the slim version of the console. It's not a big deal. Like,
yeah, I mean, I should say, let's say what it is.
Yeah.
It on the inside, it's just a PS4. This is not like the Xbox One S where they've made some small changes to what it can do in terms of 4K and stuff. This is just a PS4, but the case is a little different. It's not much smaller, honestly, because the PS4 is sort of the slim version of itself to begin with.
Yeah, it's a pretty svelte little machine.
Yeah, but this is even smaller, even really thinner. It's a little less. It takes a little less space. It does sort of still have the two-tiered thing, but the top tier is much thinner. It's got the disc tray. The buttons are now just normal buttons. They're like circular. You press.
Capacitive bullshit.
And everything else is the same. I think they took out the analog jack. Was the only thing I saw, or the optical.
Yeah, I think so.
But other than that, and then the controller for the Slim is slightly different in that under the touchpad is that color bar that you actually see on the current PS4 that shows you the different statuses.
Right. Yeah.
That's now on the controller. But other than that, it's a PS4. I will say, when this first leaked, before we knew it wasn't a hoax, where it was just it was up on an auction site, and it very easily could have been a hoax.
Yeah.
I thought it probably was, because I don't love the design of this thing. Like, it, to me, looks like a significantly uglier version of a very pretty-looking console.
Yeah.
That didn't really need a slim version. But I guess 3 years in, you have to do some kind of redesign.
The thing is, it's easy. Like, whatever changes they've made to its form factor and stuff, it's just cheaper for them to manufacture this unit than it is the one currently available. Like, that's why these things actually really get made. So, it's 3 years into the console's lifespan. They've made a cheaper model for them to manufacture. That will just be the new base model for the unit.
Yep. And it speaks to how good they got it the first time out. That usually when you do the Slim, for like the PS3, the 360, the Xbox One S, all of these things, the Slim version was like significantly better, looked nicer, they improved everything. The PS4 Slim, I don't think looks nicer or as kind of enticing. You'll get the same experience. I'm not saying that. I'd still recommend it. But it is kind of funny because the initial unit was the right size. It did everything well. Like, there were no problems that needed addressing.
Yeah.
It's just, as you say, 3 years in, components become cheaper. You can redesign it in a way that makes it cheaper to produce, and that's why you do it.
Yeah.
So, but, if you want the best looking version of the PS4 for your shelf, I'd get one now while you can get one of the original ones.
Sure.
Or wait until this comes out and get a sale on the original one.
Exactly, yeah.
Because that was kind of the weird thing with the Xbox One S, is when it came out, you could get sales on the old Xbox One, but the S was objectively better in a number of ways.
Right.
And with the PS4, I wouldn't say that. I'd say, actually, maybe take the sale on the old one, just because it looks a little cooler.
Yeah.
Like, I actually like having the light bar on the console, where you have the status and stuff. I don't... Like, is that going to be shining all the time off the DualShock 4? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read all the super specific stuff about it because it just seemed like a slightly updated version of the console.
Yeah, but it's all good, and yeah. So that's the PS4 Slim. The real news here is that they haven't announced it.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thing way more interesting about the news story is just all the details about how it got out there on eBay or whatever, and that all these publications got their hands on it and have video of it and everything.
All right, one more piece of video game news. Nintendo held a Nintendo Direct this week.
Yeah.
Their latest one, where they talked about the 3DS.
The 3Ds.
Which, obviously, the big game in the immediate future for the 3DS is Pokemon Sun and Moon. And I have to say, I'm still so excited for that game. The more that comes out about it, the better it looks. Like, that really does look like a pretty special Pokemon game. And I love that they have Snorlax going all badass now. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But the 3DS has some cool stuff coming out. I'm going to go through some of these really quick ones. They've updated Street Pass so that you can now Street Pass with 100 people at once instead of 10. That's something that always needed to be there, and I think it's it's too little too late.
Right.
But that's nice for people who still Street Pass. Pikmin is getting its own original 3DS game. It'll be a 2D side-scroller, so it's not kind of a traditional Pikmin game.
It's unfortunate that they already made Pikmin 3 on the Wii U, because then they could have just called this Pikmin 3 DS.
Yes. But we'll find out what the actual title is, but this is coming out next year.
It's probably still just going to be Pikmin 3DS.
Yes, probably.
It just would have been better if it was the third Pikmin game.
Yes, so this is the first time Pikmin has not been on a console, so this is its first handheld release. Mario Sports Superstars is coming out next March. We'll see how good it turns out to be, but it sounds kind of exciting in that it's a Mario Sports game where instead of doing one tennis game, one basketball game, one golf game, it's all in one. And they've said it's not like mini games; it really is more full-featured. I doubt it's as full-featured as a full one, but if it's moderately featured, that could actually be pretty fun.
Yeah, some of those Mario Sports games were pretty fun back in the GameCube days.
And I have the 3DS Golf one. I think it's called Mario Golf World Tour, and it's really good. It's a really good golf game. So, if you could get them all in one fell swoop, that could be fun. So those are kind of the original things. And then more interesting to me, though, is that they're porting 2 Wii U games. And fairly acclaimed and successful Wii U games. Yoshi's Woolly World is coming to the 3DS as Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, which basically just means they're doing more...
Poochie really gets top billing?
It is weird. But Poochie is the coolest part of Yoshi's Woolly World. He's like the new dog.
So you're saying he should have top billing?
Probably. He's pretty cool.
Okay.
I like Poochie. But so there's probably going to be more Poochie, because there's a good amount of Poochie in Yoshi's Woolly World, but there could be more. And then, so you'll have that on 3DS, and then they are releasing Super Mario Maker for 3DS with some limitations, and we'll talk about that. Yeah. But it's mostly Mario Maker. And it is funny to me because it just speaks to... They have these great games on the Wii U, but no one to play them. Yeah. So let's release it on the handheld that sold really well.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Yeah. You can't blame them. The one weird thing is that I would say these two. The weird things is that Yoshi's Woolly World is one of the most graphically impressive games on the Wii U, and I wonder how it'll actually look on the 3DS.
Right.
And then Mario Maker, everything's there except you can't share courses online.
Which seems like a pretty massive oversight. A lot of the reaction to once, because there was a lot of, because I didn't watch all the Nintendo Direct. I just sort of, watched some of, the clips and stuff. Yeah. But most of mine was, my experience with it was just reading people's reactions and responses to it. And it felt like, at first, everyone was like, Mario Maker on 3DS! Wait, what? Online? What? Then, there was just, an hour of, people being like, what does this mean? What is actually not in the game? And then, when people sort of sorted it out, most of people being like, oh, well... That's probably, it seems like some of the online stuff they're sort of taking out is kind of like most of the game.
Well, it depends on what kind of player you are.
Yeah.
If you're like me and you really just kind of want to be there to dick around with courses and make stuff and just have fun with it, this could be fun.
Yeah.
And I didn't engage a whole lot with... Because honestly, I don't know anyone else like far away from me who doesn't have a Wii U.
Right.
So I'm not like trading courses online. But I've done stuff like put them online for the podcast. I did that for a couple weeks. I included some codes and people played those. So that was fun. But certainly in the larger community sense, that is the biggest thing with Mario Maker is you put your code out there, people download your map and they can play it.
Yeah.
And it's this big social element. And it could always have been better on the Wii U version, but it was good enough. Like it could let you do the basic things.
I mean, it did create like a fun, sort of thriving fan community for Mario Maker that like I engaged with as someone who just wanted to watch some of the videos of the weird courses that were made and stuff. I thought that stuff was awesome.
So for some reason, that's not on the 3DS version. And I don't know, for instance, if that would dissuade me from getting it if I felt like I wanted to do some stuff on my 3DS with Mario Maker. But I can certainly understand why, in the larger sense, that's shooting yourself in the foot when it seems like a pretty smart thing. Like Mario Maker on 3DS seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But what? It's
like
exactly.
But it's like, but that's the feature you cut out. Like
like cutting one of the skins would have been less hurtful to the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's definitely weird. I wouldn't be surprised if they change course on this because of fan feedback and maybe delay it and find a way to get that back in there.
Yeah, that would be nice.
It's Nintendo rarely does that kind of thing because usually by the time they announce a game, the game is done and ready to ship. Like that's usually how it goes. Like there was a hilarious interview on Kotaku a few weeks ago with the director or maybe a spokesman for Paper Mario Color Splash, and they asked like, what are you working on in the game like to put the finishing touches on? And she said, the game's been done for months. And she's like, she didn't understand the question because that's just Nintendo culture. Is most of the games you finish and then announce. It's very actually rare to have something like Zelda Breath of the Wild where you announce it years ahead of time. But that only happens for their super big things. And even then, like Mario tends to be the other way, where we don't hear about a Mario game until it's coming out.
Yeah.
So we will see. Hopefully they change that. I don't know why the 3DS couldn't do that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's the most surprising is because it wouldn't necessarily be super surprising if they were like, well, we had to cut out like the Super Mario Brothers 3 skin or something because it's like just you can't have all that, but it'll be available as a download or something because of like the technical limitations. But there's nothing about the online features that the 3DS couldn't do any more than the Wii U.
Yeah, the 3DS has online multiplayer for things. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a online device. Like it's fine.
So that's weird.
Yeah.
But, I will say with Yoshi's Woolly World, if you are one of the many people who does not own a Wii U but likes Nintendo games and you have a 3DS, I'd recommend that highly. I don't know if the game will look as good, but it's a really, really good platformer. And it adds to the great lineup of platformers you already have on the 3DS. So that's cool. All right, last piece of news for the day.
Yes.
And, Sean, you're going to like this one.
Yes.
Shin Gojira, or Shin Godzilla, the new Godzilla movie, which was previously announced. Funimation had picked it up for distribution. Well, Funimation is coming through for us. They are releasing it in theaters the week of October 11th through the 18th, so put that down in your calendars. It'll be on 400 screens throughout the U.S., which means you can probably find it as long as you live in a moderately big city, like Denver, where we are. So we'll probably have it on a few screens here. Tickets will be made available September 9th, so we will know exactly which theaters, and we will let you guys know next week which theater we're planning on going to.
Yeah.
Because we're definitely going to go see this and talk about it.
Absolutely.
So, and so that's October. I would assume we'll get a Blu-ray or DVD sometime after that. But and it'll be, they've confirmed, subtitled. It'll be in Japanese subtitled. They're not doing any dubbing or anything.
Which is the right way to do it these days.
Yes. But, you never know. So, but yeah, that's how it's happening. So, good full week-long release. It's not a one-night thing. It might be in certain cities, but, it's upwards of 400 screens. So, this is great. I think this is as good as we could hope for.
Yeah, no, like, the fact that, like, it's getting any theatrical release over here at all is awesome. Like...
And honestly, in 2016, that's the big surprise. Usually this kind of stuff takes longer, so this is great.
Yeah, because, Godzilla 2000 was maybe there was, like, a very small thing for Final Wars, but I don't think there was. But Godzilla 2000 definitely was the last one that had, like, a limited theatrical release thing over here, and they did their whole, like, dubbing and everything. And, like, the dubbing process, and they did new music and stuff, and it's a different edit of Godzilla 2000, so that was a little more elaborate. But this is just...
We get the movie.
We just get the movie, and you just if you're near one of these cities that's going to get it, which seems like with that number of theaters you probably are, you can watch it.
Yep. And if you haven't visited Funimation's site for the movie, you should, because it's awesome.
Yeah,
and they just put good graphics together and stuff.
I mean, there's been a lot of really great art around this movie coming out of Japan from, like, obviously, like, you know, there's all, like, the manga culture and stuff like that. So, like, there's all these... I see all the time, because I follow, like, certain, like, Japanese stuff on Twitter and stuff, and I see, like, all these different famous manga authors and artists just coming out with, like, all these, like, art things after they went and saw the movie. It's really cool.
Yep.
It's everyone just seems so excited and happy and like thrilled about this movie in Japan. I want to watch it so bad.
It's the highest grossing movie of the year over there. Made a lot of money.
It's doing really well.
So awesome! Cannot wait. This will definitely be a podcast topic that week.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to try to write up something for the site. I want to write like a top 10 Godzilla movies or this kind of thing.
Oh, cool! And then maybe we can just talk through it a little on the podcast. Yeah. We should do that. I'd love to have that, because maybe I could even watch some of the like top 3 or 4.
Yeah, sure, and I can loan you some stuff, because it feels like I've been wanting to do a big Godzilla thing for the site, but it was like the 2014 movie came out at kind of the wrong time to do a big one.
Yeah, well, you know what? We got a month. Maybe we'll talk after the show.
We'll work something out, do some Godzilla stuff on the podcast, because also this is a smaller thing that they sort of just like very quietly announced. It's going to be way more niche, but there's a like anime 3D CG Godzilla movie in the works in Japan as well. That's sort of like, I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but that sort of just kind of got quietly announced after this Shin Godzilla made so much money. So it looks like, and there are good people working on it. So it looks like Godzilla is coming back. It's not just going to be this one. So
nice.
It's a good time to be a Godzilla fan again.
Absolutely.
There's a long dark quiet period there of 10 years, but we've got it going again.
Yes. All right. And finally, this is news that will also be a little mini topic to end the show. No Man's Sky. We've talked about it before. We're not going to be talking much about the quality of the game here.
Yeah.
We'll recap. You really like it.
Yeah.
I don't, but not in a way that I am like mad at the game. It's just I've played probably 6 hours of it at this point. I don't find much interesting to me, but I also find very little that I would complain about necessarily.
Yeah, it's a weird niche indie game that's going to work for some people and not work for other people. It's not meant for a wide audience. Really.
And I can list my criticisms and stuff, but I'm not. It's not. It doesn't even engender that in me that I want to do that.
Right.
If you find it cool, I think that's awesome. If not, just don't be a little bitch.
And that's a very good way to put it.
That's going to be the theme of this. Okay. Yeah. And this is the news, is that, so No Man's Sky, kind of controversial on launch. Some of those issues, very fair. For instance, PC, when it first launched, had some technical issues.
Yeah. They've patched the shit. They've released like 4 or 5 patches for the game on both PC and PS4. Like, I downloaded a new patch for No Man's Sky yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like every time I turn on my PS4, I've been getting that. But anyway, they've been patching it. It's had some issues. Some people didn't like it. It's clearly, and I think we do need to talk about that. The marketing does play a role in this. You cannot say they're blameless, and we'll say that. But basically, in the last week, the biggest new controversy is that Steam and Sony have been sort of flooded with requests for refunds, and it has become this part of fan culture around the game to figure out how you can trick Sony or Steam into giving you a refund beyond their normal policy. Yeah. The normal policy on Steam being you can, within 48 hours... and 2 hours of game time.
Yeah.
So you cannot have your play clock be above 2 hours. You can get a refund, no questions asked. It's automated. Beyond that, you can ask, and there are special cases, of course. For instance, if the game just isn't working, that sort of thing. Like Arkham Knight had that.
Yeah.
And on Sony, there are no refunds technically, but you can ask, and in special cases, again, they will give you refunds. But this has become a big deal, and play of the game, if you look at some of the graphs, has fallen off, and there's different data you can look at. But really, I think what it boils down to is, again, unless there are special cases, if you got on your PC and it just wasn't working, that's what the refund is there for, and that's why Steam has that. But if you are one of the many people at this point who have played 20, 30, 40 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours of No Man's Sky and are asking for a refund, you're a little bitch and you're a thief.
Yeah, like, it's such a weird thing that, like, doesn't, like, I played, like, probably 30, 40 hours of Metal Gear Solid 5, and, like, probably, like, 60% of that I just hated, and just, like, just hurt me inside. But I finished the game because I was interested in finishing the game, and when I finished it, I wasn't like, well, I need to give this back, because I think I think the marketing of Metal Gear Solid 5 was more deceptive than it was for No Man's Sky, because they just showed scenes from literally every single cutscene in basically every single trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5, which most people would assume that would imply that there's a lot more of this stuff in the game than what you're seeing. Other than this, you're seeing basically everything that's in the game in terms of the stories.
Yeah. No, I mean, this happens all the time, and I think it's like, here's what I would compare it to, I guess, if we want to put it in other terms.
Okay.
If you go to see a movie, and you leave a half hour in, an hour in, because you hate it, the experience is bad, whatever, and you go ask for your money back, or they give you a free pass or something, I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fair. If you stick through the whole movie, and there wasn't, and it's not like there was a problem with the projection or something.
Yeah.
But they showed it well, they gave it to you, and you
like,
just...
let's say, just hypothetically, you went and saw Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
I'm going to do... You know what? Let me do it with Suicide Squad.
Okay, sure.
Because I did go see Suicide Squad just recently.
Yeah.
I saw it at my favorite theater, the Draft House. They showed it beautifully. They did nothing wrong. I just happened to hate that movie a lot, even more than Batman. And I did technically walk out 3 minutes before the end of the movie. What I did not do was go ask for a refund from the Draft House. Because the problem was on the movie... But I sat through the whole thing.
Yeah.
I did technically get what I paid for. I didn't like it, but I made an economic transaction, and they held up their end of the bargain, especially the theater, which has nothing to do with the quality of the movie.
Yeah.
Just like the PlayStation platform and Steam have nothing to do with the quality of this kind of game. And yes, on Steam there are other games where we can have this argument. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
But... So that's the issue. If I had asked for a refund from the Draft House for that, I would be a real dick to a theater that has been good to me as a consumer. Just as Sony has been pretty good to me as a consumer, Steam, depending on what kind of games you play, is pretty good to you as a consumer.
Yeah.
If I were to ask them for a refund, I'd be a little bitch.
Yeah, like if it's a... Again, like if you play... if like I think Steam's refund policy is generally really fair for like the 2-hour playtime thing. That's like... There's a lot you can talk about with a game like Inside or something like that that makes that a little more troublesome. But like any refund policy is going to have its loopholes. But in general, that's like, yeah, if you play the very beginning of the game and you're like, I don't like this. This isn't what I thought it was. Like, I bought this game and for whatever reason, I thought this game was going to be a turn-based strategy game and it's a first-person shooter. That's like, I fucked up. I made a mistake, but this is not what I paid for. Take it back, like I want a refund. That's fair. If the game does not run, that's fair. Like if there's a technical issue, obviously. But yeah, once you've played like 10 hours, 20 hours, and there were like literally people talking about like having played the game for 50 hours and trying to get a refund. It's like you're like at some point, like it's one of those things where there's a weird cultural disconnect where I think for Jonathan, for you and me, and for lots of people, like you look at a game, you look at a movie, you think like, or you look at music or whatever, like this is a product that is also art. And there's an element of that that's like once I have engaged with it and consumed it, like whether I like it or think it's good as a piece of art, that doesn't mean that I get to get a refund on it, as opposed to if I bought a blender and I just thought, this isn't a very good blender. Like there's nothing, like it's not like the blender doesn't work. I just don't like this blender. I'm going to take this blender back. Like, those are two such different things.
And even then, when you're talking about 50 hours, that's like buying a blender, using it for 6 months, making a bunch of like milkshakes and smoothies in it, and then bringing it back and being like, you know what? I didn't like this blender after all. And they'd be like, we can't do anything with that blender. You cracked it.
Yeah.
You know? It's like...
It's just such a weird attitude to have, because it's like...
It's an entitlement attitude that I don't... is growing in games, and I expect, but I could be totally off, because maybe I'm just stereotyping that it's from younger people who have less disposable income.
I think it is, like, based on, like, because I go on Reddit quite a bit, and so I saw this started on Reddit in NeoGAF as, like, threads, like, of people organizing together, being like, hey guys, I got a refund for No Man's Sky and you can too, and like them organizing together to come up with methods. And it's like probably a lot of younger people like college age or high school age probably go doing it. And
I do get it on some level. I want to say, like, I don't get it in full. There are parts of this that I can't lie and say I don't empathize with. I do remember the time when I was not gainfully employed.
Yeah,
and I did not
strapped for cash.
And I did not have a steady income stream, and I would buy something and regret it, and I'd have to find a way kind of around that to kind of get not necessarily get my money back, but get cash positive on it. And that's why, honestly, if you're a kid with that, buy physical games, because then you can sell them or trade them in or whatever, and then you're not being a dick. But also, it's just, I think it's something you have to learn, though, it's at whatever age it comes, that even if you're strapped for cash on these kinds of things, these things do matter. And paying for something and then using it for a totally fair amount of time just because you didn't like it, again, as you say, it's art. Just because you didn't like it doesn't mean you deserve or need or earn your money back.
Yeah.
You did pay and get what you paid for. If that's not what you thought it would be, it's a more complex issue than that. It's not tailored for you, the individual.
Yeah, and it's like, and people act like the marketing on No Man's Sky was somehow like way more deceptive than average marketing in a way that it's like, you do realize when you watch an ad for like fucking Burger King or something, that's not their actual food, right?
Yes.
Like, that's never been, like, marketing is not honest. Marketing is not there to help you as a consumer. Marketing is there to get you to buy their thing. Like, if there are lines, and there are very fuzzy lines, I don't think No Man's Sky ever, like, crossed one of those lines. Like, fucking trailers that come out 2-3 years before a game release are not in any way representative of that game, because guess what? The game hasn't been fucking made. You can't make a trailer that's representative of something that doesn't exist yet. And so it's like, I get that it's like, it can be very frustrating to feel deceived by the marketing in the way I very honestly did about Metal Gear Solid 5 by the time I was into the second half of that game and realized, oh, there's no more to this story than what they showed in the trailers. I know everything that happens in the story already because I watched 2 trailers of this game. Like, that made me upset and frustrated with the marketing behind it, but not in a way that I was like, well, I should get my money back, in a way that's like, well, they got me this time. Because being a consumer in a capitalist economy is you fighting against marketing your entire life, and you lose more often than not, and you have to live up to that because you're not changing it, because capitalism always wins.
Yeah, and where I find the marketing for No Man's Sky interesting, I don't necessarily think it's excessively deceptive. It is deceptive, but as you say, all marketing is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's excessively so. I think the problem, and I think it's honestly a problem that is already biting Sony and Hello Games in the ass, is that they just mismarketed it to me. Is that the right version of this game is, in terms of marketing and how you pitch it, is like one of the Sony Play titles.
Sure,
it's like a little indie game that does not have a lot of hype before it comes out. It costs $20 to $40, and then it spreads through word of mouth. If No Man's Sky came out that way, I think it would become a hit, and it would be beloved by a lot of people, because people would organically come to it rather than feeling like they have to go play it, It's a different kind of thing. They marketed it as the big AAA game of the month.
Yeah, they sold it for $60.
They sold it for
mistake.
Yes, I do think $60, and that's the thing. I think $60 is probably excessive for the game.
Yeah,
in my opinion, in terms of what it offers, I know it's got 18 quintillion planets and all that, but I've played 6 hours, and I kind of feel like, for me personally, I've seen all I need to of it, and maybe I will go back to it every once in a while, maybe. But it doesn't have a lot to offer to me as a player, and that's just a subjective thing. But yeah, the difference is I'm not going and demanding a refund for it.
And not like creating weird, insane online like Reddit threads or NeoGAF threads, just like trying to organize a weird cult around taking out No Man's Sky, taking out Hello Games, and like trying to defame them and all this stuff. Like, the attitude, the fan backlash has been so absurdly extreme. That's like, there's parts of it I get, like, and I think we all saw this coming, especially when the game leaked like 2 weeks ahead of its release. And like, that one guy played it and put his responses and stuff online and his gameplay videos and how he felt about it. It was like, this game, we've all known forever that this game is not what everyone wants it to be, because no game is ever going to be what everybody wants it to be. And Hello Games, I think one of the problems with the way that they were talking about the game is that they very clearly wanted to be mysterious about it. They didn't want to give everything in the game away. They want to just say, like, pitch it and then just leave it at that. And unfortunately, like, in today's like market for like the people who consume games, you can't do that, because you look like every website in the world is trying to interview you. Like, Sony is throwing you up on E3 all the time. Like, and there are these people that are so dedicated that are watching every single interview, reading every single interview. And so then eventually when the fucking game comes out and someone starts their weird Reddit thread that's like, let's like list every single thing in like that Sean Murray has ever said about No Man's Sky that isn't in the game, or is like kind of not in the game, or like all these features that got cut. That's because things get cut when you talk about a feature 2 years before the game comes out, and that happens for every video game. And the fact that early access is a thing means that people should probably know that by now, but apparently that's not the case. That like, if you say, like, if you have 500 interviews about your game while it's still in development, you're going to say some stuff that's going to be vague because you're not trying to explain everything, and then everyone's going to misconstrue that as you saying that, like, this is some fucking game where apparently people think that you're going to meet up with your friends and go through space and be a space pirate. And it's like, that's not what you would have to be insane to actually think that's what the game is, to misconstrue these vague statements he made because he was trying to stay mysterious, as meaning that it's somehow a multiplayer game because, like, maybe you can see someone. There are online components. He wanted to keep the online nature of the game completely vague, which I appreciate, like, people trying to keep mystery in their game. That's one of the reasons why people like games like Dark Souls, is because you don't know everything about it going into it, because it is a discovery process.
Yes.
But you can't... It's so hard to do that and market the game at the same time without people going insane about it.
And ultimately, No Man's Sky is completely a game that is what you make of it. It's just,
exactly.
you can play it in several different ways. Either it conforms to what you kind of want to do with it or not, but no game can be everything to everyone. And it is, I think, one of the most toxic things about media these days. I think it started with video games, but it's starting to... kind of stretch out and reach other forms of media like movies and TV, where people feel like they have the entitlement to be part of the development process.
Yeah.
That, like, art is somehow now completely communal, and it's by committee, and it's a democracy somehow, when it's not. That's not what art is. And, you see this with No Man's Sky, where it's talked about for 3 years before it comes out, and everyone feels like they have some ownership of it because they read an interview or watched a gameplay video, and that's part of the experience, which is so alien, I think, to you and me, who really just want to play the game.
Yeah, like, I will read a couple of interviews, like, I'll see your E3 trailer every now and then because I'm curious, but then I'll kind of move on with my day. I will read the interview because, like, I was taking a dump, and I had my phone on me.
Exactly, and we use that to kind of gauge what we're interested in.
Yeah.
But ultimately, our verdict and everything lies in a playable version of the product.
Yeah.
And I think for so many people now, that's become an afterthought. And I think it's part of how media reports on things. It's a really toxic thing in games journalism that, again, has radiated outwards to other kinds of journalism, where very rarely do we talk about the movie or the game when it's out and we're following it. We talk about it for months ahead of time, and we report on every trailer and image and all this other shit. But we don't actually talk about the thing. And some sites, I think, have made a very good concerted effort to change that, like Giant Bomb and Kotaku and places like that. Vice Gaming now.
Yeah.
Some of these smart sites that are much less about the hype than it is about the product, and I love that. We get that. I think we've had that with TV for a very long time, and TV is the one that's immune to this because of the culture around recaps and stuff.
Yeah.
Where you really analyze it episode by episode, which is the way to do it. Or season by season or whatever. And so it's not about, we're going to analyze the whole thing before it comes out. But with movies, it's a totally toxic thing that is killing movies these days.
Yeah.
I mean, this is... I'm going to have to be sympathetic for a moment to a movie I hate, but Suicide Squad was just torn apart by this. That they started, and it's Warner Brothers' own fault on some level, they invited it, but like 2 years before the movie's out, they're announcing everything about it. You're seeing every little piece of makeup and behind the scenes. You're seeing trailers a year before it comes out, and over, and they're seeing, well, what's working, what isn't, before anyone's actually sat down and seen the actual vision for the movie. And so the movie that came out was literally edited by the trailer company based on audience feedback of snippets in trailers.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, that's the dystopian vision of Hollywood that people have made fun of in movies. And that's how movies are getting made. And I really fear that that's what can happen to games, too.
Yeah.
Because, No Man's Sky is what it is. I don't personally think it's necessarily a great game, but I think it has elements of greatness in it, and I think it is great to some people, and that's all you can kind of ask at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If they actually made the version of No Man's Sky that the committee and everyone wanted, it would just be garbled mess.
Yeah,
it would be a jumble of nothing.
No identity. It would have no sense of itself,
No, it wouldn't be anything. And we see that a lot with these kinds of things that just get kind of mushed by committee into nothingness. And so And again, we talked about this last time with the issue now in games of people wanting the one true game that will last forever, and you want something that lasts hundreds of hours, which again, I think is very foreign to us. There are some games we'll get obsessed with, but we don't want to play them forever. We like to sample a lot of things.
Yeah.
Not sample, but experience, So I don't know. It's a strange case. It's an evidence of just the toxic culture around a lot of games now.
Yeah, it's something that's like, I think you're really on point with pointing out that there's something about, there's so much writing on games before they come out, and there's like something weird about like that. It's like, there's a certain level of that's like, whatever. You're like, you put the trailer on your website and you say, it's like, da-da-da, and it's like, we went to E3 and we played this build of the game, and here's your little preview article. That's fine. But like, there's a certain degree of it where I'll kind of don't want to pick on this article because it's fine for what it is, but it's like the most recent example I can see that just sort of like, kind of maybe twist my head, where on Polygon, there was, I think it was Allegra Frank, wrote an article, and she's a very good writer, and it was about the Dead or Alive Extreme 3 VR mode or whatever, and it was this feminist criticism of like a cell phone video of someone playing the VR mode for like 3 minutes, and it was a fine article for what it was, but it was this thing, it was almost kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back thing, where it's like I'd read so many things kind of like about this and like other sort of related topics that were like this, where it's like, your basic critical premises may be fine with how you're approaching like what you're discussing in this article, but like the fact that not only have you not played this game, you don't know anybody who's played this game. You don't know anybody who knows anybody who's played this game because it's a fucking VR mode that hasn't been released for a game that hasn't even been released in the West. And like you writing this like long critical piece on it, but you have no firsthand experience of it, which means that the criticism by its very nature has to be shallow. Like no matter whether the critical premise is in the right place or not, like no matter what, if that's what you're doing, if you're trying to write critically about a game you haven't actually played, or write critically about a movie you haven't seen, or a book you haven't read, or an album you haven't listened to, you can't bring anything new to that because you have no firsthand experience of the thing. You can only give a secondhand impression of someone else engaging with whatever this thing is. It's like, you can't write criticism that way. Like, you can write a preview or something about, like, this is what I feel about this trailer. I think this trailer was well edited or something. But you cannot say this trailer, like, means that this is a bad movie, or this is going to be a good movie, or this is going to be a problematic movie, or a movie of our times. Like, you can't say that because you haven't seen the movie, you haven't played the game. You can't write that article. You have no foot to stand on with that article.
Exactly. And you know, Polygon is a great example of this. I'm going to give an example for games and movies. But Polygon is a site that I think once was very smart, really liked Polygon, and I think the bigger they've gotten, they still have a lot of talented writers.
Yeah, and every once in a while there's a really, like, they had a really great piece about Batman the Killing Joke that, like, was, like, from 3 different writers' perspectives.
Yeah.
That I thought was really good, just, like, a month ago or something.
Yeah, and so every once in a while they have these great articles still, and they have plenty of talented writers on staff, and I will say, as someone who's written for these kinds of sites, it is not necessarily, and probably not, the individual writer's fault in these cases. It's the corporate culture and the need for hits and to stay in business. But what has happened is that those talented writers are being sent out to just write hype and basically do the marketing of the corporations that can pay for this stuff if they want anyway.
Right.
And so they're doing free marketing for bigger companies. And so all it is on Polygon, you very rarely these days see stuff that is about games that are actually out. Mm-hmm. They have reviews, but they've honestly been doing fewer of those. Actual reviews that you read of games, they're doing fewer and fewer. You have those, but then after the review, you're not going to get much more of it. Maybe they'll do an update to the review if there's an update, but they're not going to write about that. What they're writing about is the hype pieces about, here's a trailer, here's an interview, here's one quote that we're going to spin into 500 words because you need the 500 words to hit SEO optimization for Google. Yeah. I can tell you all about this. It's horrifying, but that's why you take these little clips and you spin them into a 500-word piece. 500 words isn't a lot, but when you've got nothing to make out of it, it's really stretched thin, but you got to get it to those 300 to 500 words for SEO traffic. Yeah. And so you do that, and Polygon has become a bastion of that, and I hate it. I hate that that's happened, and it's sad to me because that's a site with a lot of talent behind it, I think. And on the movie side, this has happened to a site I used to really love called HitFix, which is where so many talented movie and TV writers wrote. Most of the staff from the original HitFix is gone. It's down to the only two people I still read there are two original people, to be fair, but Drew McWeeny and Alan Sepinwall still have homes there. I would not expect that to last much longer, given the type of traffic they're chasing. They've become very just a sort of corporate hype machine, where it's all articles about things that haven't come out yet. It's all hype pieces. It's just little snippets of stuff from interviews and stuff, and it's meaningless. It's you're reading ads that people are writing. Good writers, again, lots of good writers there beyond the two I mentioned that have come over the years that I wish were writing for a more substantive publication. But it makes me very sad in that way, because the only way to keep the money train rolling in the internet age is to just do empty hype. And the problem of this is that empty hype has readership. That's why it's made, and then it reflects back on the products, on the movies and the games and stuff, and that's what it's made for, and that's the culture that comes out of it. I love the internet. The internet is a positive thing. It's got so much, embedded in it of hope for humanity to me.
Yeah.
But it is destroying mainstream art.
Yeah, because
utterly, it's just destroying it.
Because it's either you're advertising something, or like it's that. I think another like an example with movies of the different side of it is with the Ghostbusters movie. It's like, how many fucking articles did you see about that movie months and months before it came out? Now, how many articles have you seen now that it came out? Like, other than a review of the movie, how much criticism has been written about the movie, about like the actual movie that this person has now seen?
None, and
that they can write critically about, like its place in feminist cinema or like its place in fan cinema. Like nothing,
and it killed that movie.
Yeah,
it did. The kind of hype that the internet and actual publications, not just message boards, allowed itself to fuel, shot that movie down before it had a chance. The actual movie is really good. And I wish I had more time to write and talk about it. Maybe I will when the DVD comes out or something. But it's a really good movie that got trampled months before it came out. And this is happening more and more. And frankly, this has become something in politics too. I don't want to get too far off track in that. But the reason a fascist demagogue like Donald Trump can get as far as he can is because people don't call him on his shit.
Right.
And they write fluff pieces about this guy which don't actually help us. And they write fluff pieces about Hillary Clinton that blow nothing into something without actually looking at the real issues with either candidate.
Yeah.
And that creates an uninformed electorate, and that has real impacts on elections and things. We'll see what impact it has now. But it's definitely, it's the kind of culture that I think starts in entertainment journalism and is just radiated outwards. And it's toxic, and I don't like it. And coming back to I know we start with No Man's Sky and refunds, but that's what it results in, is you're playing with fire, and you get really burned by fans who just want their money back and are bitching about it, and there's no positive hype for the game out there anymore, because no one ever really took the time to engage with the game itself critically.
Yeah.
They engaged with the hype plenty critically, but the object itself, nada.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just a really frustrating thing about the culture and community of like when you're trying to engage with this criticism. And I do like want to take a second to again point out like Vice Gaming, which is very new, has had some really great stuff over the past couple of weeks that are like it's a little bit older, but they had a piece where a guy was talking about fucking Mafia 2, which is a game that came out in like 2009 or something, and had this interesting take on that game. That's like this great little piece about it that's like, if maybe it's not going to generate a huge amount of site traffic, but it's a really well written piece about a dude who knows this one game really well and has an interesting perspective on it that can help you inform you, the reader, in a new critical perspective on video games. That's the kind of stuff that should be more out there, but there is some. So the stuff like the guest writing on Giant Bomb or Kotaku or Vice Gaming, that writing is out there. It's just very hard to find.
I read a great piece last night on Kotaku that was defending Modern Warfare 2. I did not agree with every part of its premise, but it was smart, well articulated, and interesting kind of thing to read, whether you agree or disagree with it. That's the kind of writing that I think actually makes for a successful site. Because here's the thing. A site like HitFix or Polygon, to me, is way more liable to go out of business when those things stop working than a site like Kotaku.
Once Game of Thrones stops airing, it's
your
revenue is gone.
Well, if you're just chasing the SEO, the search engine optimization, is fickle. That can fuck you. If you actually build a reader base, if you actually have substance, that's not fickle. That can last. And so those other sites are built to last because they've cultivated a niche and they've cultivated actual readership and loyalty.
Yeah.
And, that's what made me sad about HitFix. HitFix had that once they threw it out. Completely threw it out. and that's very depressing to me. And, so in the end, this kind of stuff is going to fail on a large scale. It'll result in things like the No Man's Sky debacle and things like this. But, I think it's the problem with the internet and certain types of mainstream media, because the world feels so big and interconnected now, trying to be all things to all people. And no matter what kind of platform you have, that's impossible. Yeah. You need to be something to some people, and you can find success in that.
Yeah, and always trying to have the hot take on the new thing instead of just having the substantial take on the thing that interests you.
Yes, and so, end of the day, No Man's Sky is a fascinating object lesson in this because it is something to some people.
Yeah.
It's not a game that panders to everyone. It is a thing, whatever it is. It exists as something, right?
Yeah.
But it was birthed into a world where it was made to be all things to all people, and of course it disappointed.
Yeah, and of course it has this kind of fan reaction, which only clouds the more interesting discussions do actually have about where it succeeds and where it fails at what it's trying to be. And it's really hard to have that conversation in the cacophony of people screaming, trying to get refunds and screaming about Sean Murray lying to them and all of this stuff. And it's like, you played the fucking game for 50 hours. Don't you have something substantive to take away from that? Like, we played Metal Gear Solid 5 for like 40 hours and we talked about like a 5-hour fucking podcast or whatever about it.
Exactly.
Like there's something, even if you don't like it, it's a piece of art. And once you've engaged with it and consumed it, you should be critical about that experience and you will gain something important from it, whether you enjoyed the thing or not. It's an object lesson for you, the person, the audience to experience. And that's the way to consume art. It's not just there to sort of, fire off some fucking photons in your electrons in your brain and make you happy for a little bit. It's there to sort of help you grow as a person. And that's the way you should engage with something like that.
All right. Well, Sean, we're going to wrap up here.
Yeah.
I am going to read a piece of listener mail.
Okay.
I'm calling it listener mail. It's just a tweet. But I feel like when we're on the air, that's say a listener tweet.
You should have just printed out the tweet and put it in an envelope just to keep the mystique of it.
We had a question, and I wanted to see what I had not heard of this before.
Okay.
But our listener, Levi Jack Johnson, I wonder if that's his actual name.
I hope so.
Anyway, he asked, did you guys watch Persona 5 The Daybreakers yet?
Oh, yes.
Just renewed my Crunchyroll subscription for those glorious 20 minutes. I actually didn't know about this yet. What is Persona 5 The Daybreakers?
Okay, right. Actually, I'm glad that question came in because I did watch it yesterday and I was going to bring it up on the timeline and I forgot to. So this is good. It's it's kind of like, the Final Fantasy 15 Brotherhood thing. It's a small animated episode. It's just one 23-minute episode. I don't think they're planning on making more. That is, as far as I can tell, it's supposed to be like a small standalone side adventure that would take place sometime early in Persona 5 that features sort of the main character, the two blonde-like characters that have been featured in all the marketing from the beginning, and the one guy with the fox mask and Morgana the cat, just on a small little side adventure that's kind of its own self-contained story. That's just kind of a tease of the characters and setting, and it simulcasted on Crunchyroll yesterday or maybe the day before that, and it's really cool. I like it a lot. I think for people interested in Persona 5, it's totally fine to watch it. It's not spoilery. It doesn't give away anything more than what the trailers do. It's just, it gives you a little, taste of that world and those characters. The animation, is sort of up and down, but once the battle sequence happens at the end, where, that's where they put all their time and effort. So, it looks like the animation at the end is very, very good.
Nice.
The music is awesome. You get a bit of the hint of, I think, what the battle theme in the game is going to be. And it's just a fun little side story, and also, the main character in Persona 5 seems like he's a real fucking badass, and you get a bit of that.
Nice. Well, I will watch it for next week.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it in more depth.
Yeah, I don't think there's not a huge, it's not very substantial because it is meant to be a piece of ad or marketing, but it is a lot of fun. It's a good little thing to watch.
All right. Well, sounds exciting. Look forward to next week. Not sure exactly what we're going to talk about, but we will find plenty of things to do, including that little Persona 5 bit. So thank you to our listener tweet, and we'll see if we have more next time. This has been a long one.
Yeah, it has been a very long one. I mean, we need to stop this so I can get going and making my top 10 Godzilla list because that's going to take me some time.